What's up, everyone? Welcome to the 537th episode of the Pokemon Podcast. It's super effective. I'm your host, Steve. With me is Greg.
Hello, 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 hello. Oh, there's a Piplup on screen.
There's a Piplup. I figured if we're doing introductions, I might as well bring Piplup in.
I mean, I didn't tell me there was a Penguin 2 coming to this. I would have been more prepared.
No Will this week. We gave Will the week off, but we have a special guest. We have Roger here. Roger, you can introduce yourself, where you're known on Twitter, all that stuff. I'm sure people know who you are, though.
Yeah, no, I'm Roger from the YouTube channel Roger's Base. I do live reactions to Nintendo Directs. I play Pokemon. I read One Piece every week. Basically, Japan games, Japanese games. I cover all of it. Thank you for having me. This is the first time we have talked since Worlds, actually. Yeah. And we planned this all the way back at Worlds, because we were talking in the lobby of the hotel room, and you were like, dude, we got to have you on the podcast. I'm like, dude, you need to do it in 2.5 months when I'm actually back in the United States.
Yeah.
So, it's been a whirlwind between like Cape Town and then London and then New York and then Chicago and then Hawaii, and now I'm finally back at home in LA. So thank you very much for accommodating. It's a pleasure. Also, I will say you guys are the first Pokemon-centric podcast that I have been on since I was in high school.
That's a lot of qualifiers right there. That's like a whole lot of narrowing the category down to make it a first. You're the first
to be
hosted podcasts that started in 2010 that has been going for this long, that's Pokemon specific, that has one host named Greg and one host named Steve.
That's
that
right.
I have been on. You're the first.
You're the first. No, the last time I was on specifically a Pokemon podcast was the Bulbacast. And this was like pre me even going on I wasn't even like Roger's Base at the time. I was going by like Nintendo Theater, which is like my old name when I was like a Bulba wiki editor person. So yeah, this is like way back in the day. This was when Battle Frontier was airing in North America, and I was going on Sarumi looking for the little screenshots from the episodes, and I remember freaking out when Sceptile finally evolved. And so that's how long it's been. So I'm happy to be back in the game.
I forgot the Bulbacast was a thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Is it not still a thing?
Come and got no.
I think before the pandemic they tried to start it up again, and then I don't think it made it. But podcasting.
They've got you guys to compete with. They said too bad. It's super effective. It's just too good.
There's only one. I mean, I'm not saying we actively hunt down other Pokemon podcasts and make them pay and suffer, but I'm not saying we don't do it.
So we have a new Pokemon to talk about. We have some other Pokemon news to talk about. The Paldea TCG stuff is actually coming. We're gonna get Roger's thoughts on Gen 9. Before we get into that, what's super funny is Roger and I met at Worlds.
Yep.
I was setting up a live stream to react to the finals in our like fancy secret media room. And when I was setting up, Roger pointed out that we met prior to this.
Yes, years ago. Years and years ago.
10 years ago, because I used to go to a show called C2E2, and I would like speak or do a panel there. And apparently Roger was also doing that, but his was always like around my time, or like same room, but like before or after.
Yep. We would always just miss each other for like years, because we were doing the live shows for Japan time, like I think 2013, 14, and no. It would have been 14, 15, and 16. And then we took a break year and then went back in 2018. And for the 2014 and 2015 year, if I'm remembering correctly, your guys' panel was either at the same time or was like the same day with an hour difference between our panel. And I always wanted to catch your panel because I'm like, I like Pokemon. I think I would like these guys, and I could never end up making it. So yeah, it's wild that we're actually finally here. But we did meet. I actually think initially it wasn't at C2E2, it was at Anime Central, because I did catch a panel that you guys did at Anime Central for Pokemon, and we had talked briefly afterwards. So I think that was actually our first meeting.
Which city was that in?
Chicago. Yeah, it was Chicago.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't remember a lot from 10 years ago.
No, I know. To be fair, it's just when I remember certain shows or certain people, the core memories get unlocked. So,
got it.
Yeah.
Must be nice being young.
All right, well let's start off with the first bit of Pokemon news here, and we're just gonna go with the Scarlet and Violet, which is there's a new Pokemon. I struggle to say this name. It's like a Saint Bernard, right? Is that what the dog is supposed to be?
Well, it's not a Saint Bernard. It is a type of dog in that family. It doesn't have the coloring of a Saint Bernard or the size of a Saint Bernard, but it can assume that the last part is Ard. So if you take the first part as grieving, Greavard.
Greavard is also how I've been saying it. Yeah,
but we need to talk about how many people is the Pokemon Company willing to kill for footage at this point. Professor Willow died. That person died in the snow. This person died in a graveyard. 4 random people died for Ultra Beasts. This company is becoming a menace, and we are complicit in murder. To
be fair, see, I'm used to it. You were talking about this beforehand. You were like, how could you be so callous? But realistically, I am used to Smash Brothers trailers. And literally, Mario dies every trailer. He gets stabbed by Sephiroth. Luigi gets ripped up by a scythe in the Castlevania castle. Mega Man literally gets impaled by Ridley. So I'm used to it at this point.
That Super Smash Bros. Takes place in an alternate universe where they are forced to live out their immortal lives, never being free, forever having to fight for the sins that they committed during their life, including mass murder of Goombas. Like, we know why they're there. They are punished for a reason.
But why is Pikachu being punished? Why is Jigglypuff punished? They didn't kill anybody.
Really?
Who did Pikachu kill? Really? Let's have this conversation.
Have you not seen how many times Pikachu has electrified Ash to death and they had to bring out another clone? Why do you think Ash is only 10? This is how many clone bodies they've gone through, because Pikachu is a menace. Meanwhile, Brock gets a rocket ship because Brock is allowed to live an entire life. And Ash has to start over every season because Pikachu has to kill him and bring out another clone. This is why Ash never ages.
Is there a difference between a Saint Bernard and a Bernard, or are those two different dogs?
I actually have no idea.
A Saint Bernard and a Bernard?
Yeah.
You're asking the wrong person. I've always had mutts, and then right now I have a Pomeranian, so it's like completely not helpful in the slightest for this conversation.
Well, Greg said that Saint Bernards are really big, so I was like,
Saint Bernards are huge.
Is there just a regular Bernard?
No, there's not a Bernard as a dog.
Like there's a mega septile and then a septile.
Yeah,
a Saint Bernard and a Bernard.
Saint Bernard is the name of that specific breed, and I forget why they're called Saint Bernard. It's some Switzerland nonsense.
All right, well, you guys look that up. I'll give you the details
they are
here. Normally,
part of the Molliser breeds, which
that's a big
covers
word.
a wide range of dogs.
If you look at Wikipedia for Bernard, it literally just says a French and West Germanic masculine given name, also a surname, and then links to a picture of, you guessed it, Saint Bernard, which I assume the dog is named after. So,
got it. Greavard barely moves, resting peacefully underground. It pokes its topmost part of its head above ground and lights an eerie glow at its tip. Then it waits for somebody to approach. When a person draws near, Greavard jumps out of the ground and lets out a spooky cry that would startle most unsuspecting people, though it doesn't appear to do this with ill intent. It has a friendly and affectionate personality that playing even the slightest bit of attention will make it overjoyed and follow the trainer wherever they go. Of all the Pokemon residing in the Paldea region, it's known to be especially easy to befriend. However, it will slowly absorb the life force of those around it, so it's not best to play with it too much. What's more, it has a powerful jaw that will shatter bones. A single bite from Greavard can be grievous. Trainers are advised to approach it with caution.
I know it's Grievous because of Star Wars. General Kenobi.
So it's believed to be based off of the Briard dog, which I sent a link to the Wikipedia so you can look at the picture.
Let's see it. All right.
Because it has the shag over the eyes that is typical of the large sheepdog.
This makes a lot more sense. Okay.
So the belief is that that's where the last part of the name came from. So grieving and the Briard dog, because they have the. It also looks like Muttley from the old cartoons, which is probably what I'm going to name mine when I take this on my journey because this is super cute. This has also brought my official score for Scarlet and Violet to 1 out of 10.
Because they added a dog.
Was it currently 0?
Yeah, it's 0 out of 10.
Why?
Like, I don't have time to cover this.
Okay. I have time. It's because his favorite Pokemon's not in the game. I listened
to the last episode as I was driving back from a party last night, and I heard nothing about a 0 out of 10. I just heard your experience at the demo.
I wasn't allowed to give my ratings according to Papa Nintendo.
I did. Yes, that's true. According to the embargo, we were not allowed to rate the game. So anytime Greg said 0 out of 10, I had to cut it.
You're going to have to cut it now. We're giving you extra work. I'm sorry.
This, I feel like, okay, so this is the 20th Pokemon they've shown from Scarlet and Violet, and there was the debate about Wiglet being a Diglett. It ended up being a whole different Pokemon, which totally fair, right? You know, we had this conversation 12 years ago, 10 years ago with Bouffalant and Tauros and stuff like this. But with this Pokemon specifically, people really hung on the fact that they just stuck a Litwick on its head.
I think it's kind of cute.
Yeah, I don't know if that's my problem with the Pokemon. I think I don't like its jaw. It feels very Dreadnought to me.
It's very chompy. It's got a very chompy jaw, but it's very cute. It's a very cute chompy jaw because it smiles and then it opens its horrible mouth.
And then I saw a picture of the Luigi's Mansion dog, Polterpup, and I was like, man, that's a better dog.
What?
How dare you?
That is factually incorrect. If you look at anything in the Luigi's Mansion games that are the new Luigi's Mansion games, the old original Luigi's Mansion had lots of personality with the ghosts. The Polterpup and like all the new ghosts that are in the next level ones, nah, they are mid. Compared to all the other ghosts in the original Luigi's Mansion, there were dead babies, there were like rocking chair ghosts, there were all these other weird things, and now it's just like random generic Ghost 35 inside of a knight's outfit.
How can you say Polterpup is a better pup? It is literally just a blob with a collar on it.
Finally,
you would know that it's a dog is because of the collar, and you could also be convinced that it's a cat.
It is. It's a weird amorphous blob that doesn't really look like any animal.
It's like somebody looked at Casper and said, well, what if I made it a dog? Well, how do we do that? Well, put a collar on it. Cool. Done.
I didn't know there could be so much Polterpup hate. He also has it. Polterpup is a good name, too.
Polterpup is a good name, but that doesn't make a good art. This dog with its cute candle under the ground, love it.
I also
got
right
a
there
big
with you.
smiley jaw that looks like a jack-o'-lantern face, plus it's probably going to get a bunch of bite moves. I'm into it.
On the topic of bite moves, I will also say, I know this thing's only ghost type, right? It's mono ghost type,
yes,
which was weird at first because you see the candle on its head, you think ghost fire, right? You would think he has like a little Litwick, like you said, on the top of his head, and then he's going to eventually have fire moves. I actually think if this thing evolves, I think it's going to be ghost dark. Because of what you said exactly, which is that it seems like it's going to have a lot of bite moves, and obviously bite and crunch are both dark type moves. Mm-hmm. He'll probably end up getting Fire Fang or the other elemental fangs. I'm here for it. But, Steve, I will say, Reagan is right there with you. When she first saw this dog, she said it could have been cute, but it has the ugly jaw, and I don't like it now. So, you are not alone in saying you don't like the jaw.
People are all up on Space Helmet Jaw Giraffe, and like that's the cutest thing ever. And then this has a similar jaw that actually fits for a dog, and people are like, I don't like the jaw. It's a space helmet that shuts and it grins evilly at people.
That's
they put
jaws,
a giraffe into space, and you have a dead dog that's got a jack-o'-lantern themed mouth, and you're like, no, I don't like it.
I know. I'll take giant jaw ghost dogs over whatever Armarouge and Cello, whatever its name is anyway. It's like,
you don't like those Pokemon?
Not at all, man. Yeah.
How dare you? Why did you bring this person on? This is the worst episode we've ever had.
I've never heard you say you liked Armarouge and Ceruledge, Greg. I think they're fine. They're just not my style of Pokemon.
I agree. They are not my style of Pokemon. They look too Gallade. They look too humanoid for me. I think my favorites from this generation, as I'm sure we're going to talk about, are like the very non-humanoid, classical-looking kind of Pokemon. So, yeah, Armarouge, very cool for people who like it, just not my thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always funny that let's back up a second here because there's not a lot to talk about for the dog. Very disappointing so far. I will say that the dog has pickup as an ability. It makes sense, but Ball Fetch was such a cool and such a great ability that Yamper had. They haven't given it to a single Pokemon. They show a new dog doesn't have Ball Fetch. So either hopefully Yamper is coming back with Ball Fetch. Hopefully another Pokemon has Ball Fetch. I feel like this would be a perfect Pokemon for Ball Fetch. I think we're all in agreement that this thing is evolving.
Definitely, yeah.
What I want to talk about, though, is like how they presented this Pokemon. I feel like in Sword and Shield, they were like, here's a 24-hour live stream of 2 Ponyta. Hope you enjoy. And this, they've kind of been doing like these little, I don't know, almost like short form, like somebody at the Pokemon Company discovered that TikTok was a thing, and they're like, "Hey, let's do like a 30-second preview, and then the next day we'll tease it out." And besides having us wake up at 8 a.m. Central Time or 6 a.m. Pacific,
some of us have jobs and we're already awake. So just because you sleep until 4 p.m. every day does not mean it was a bad time.
I don't think anyone was happy waking up at 8 a.m. to have Iono announce that she is having an announcement the next day.
Yeah,
there's not
I think
a single person that was happy
made
about
a lot
that.
of people mad. Yeah, and I'm happy because I happened to be traveling, so I didn't wake up. I normally would. I would do like a live stream or something, and I was thrilled that I didn't. And ever since then, from now until this game gets released, if they're like 6 a.m., we're going to show a new Pokemon, I'm like, I can wait. I'm good.
But the weird thing is people weren't that upset when we got that snow footage that didn't show anything. And then 2 days later, we got
Hisui and Zoroark.
That was not at 8 a.m. They showed that during the day.
So people are like mad at how dare you do this? You're just mad at the time. And the problem is you're mad at yourself for because it was up all day.
Yeah.
You could have slept in and just watched it after. But the fact that you decided to put the pressure on yourself to wake up at 8 a.m. to watch a teaser trailer, that is on you. It's not their fault for doing a teaser trailer because they've done it before.
I think it's 100% their fault. They have a situation where they say, hey, wake up at 8 a.m. Here's a 14-minute trailer. Hey, wake up at 8 a.m. Here's a 2-minute trailer that doesn't announce that's literally announcing another 2-minute trailer later this week.
I think it's all about setting expectations, right?
There's a huge difference in those two.
Yeah.
But they didn't put a whole lot of announcements between either. Like, there's a lot of people deciding what it was going to be without them stating what it was going to be.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone woke up being like, oh, great, like she's announcing another announcement.
No, but I think like the rollout for these games and the way they are announcing things is definitely weird compared to the last few, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I am very much in the camp that I want to go in with as little knowledge as possible, right? Like, I'm happy they've only shown like 20 Pokemon going into this one. Good. It's an open world game. I want to discover this stuff on my own on stream, have my reactions, see which Pokemon I want to use. That's great. However, I do think because there are fewer Pokemon that are being revealed and they're showing less because it is an open world game, and I think they want more people to go into it like me, then I think that this time around they're spreading out these announcements in a way that they normally would not be spreading out things. You look back to like how Alola was. We were getting multiple alternate forms of Pokemon in the same trailer as like 2 new gym leaders and all these other characters, and that really hasn't been the case for the last like 4 or 5 reveals, if I recall correctly. We had this one, we had Grafify, we had Giraffurig's evolution, and it was like one little bit of new information with other stuff, and I think that's where people are getting upset. I am also very much in the camp with Greg that like you don't have to wake up at 6 a.m. to see this trailer. You don't. The people that this upsets, which I completely understand, are people like you and me, Steve, who are streaming this, who are setting this up as our day because this is our job to be like, what is this new Pokemon information we're going to be getting? And then this is what we end up getting. And we are then forced to create and turn out content based on a fun little teaser trailer of Ionio talking, who's probably not even going to talk in the main game anyway. Like, that's where people are getting upset, right? And I don't think it is on the fault necessarily of Pokemon Company because they're spreading it out the best way they can in terms of the information that they actually want to show pre-release.
I just wonder if instead of saying, hey, 8 a.m. every single time, if they just drop it during the day. Or just don't even
There's no then people are going to complain about you never know when these things are coming, and I have a schedule to keep, and I have to make content, and you're dropping it in the middle of the day, and I have to wake up this. Or Sarumi's like, it's the middle of the night for me because I'm asleep, and you drop it at whatever time.
As somebody who makes content, I wouldn't get mad if a company just dropped something. Like,
yeah, but people do.
Yeah,
people
sure,
will though.
do.
For sure.
You don't get mad, but a million people do. Like, you're mad at this one, and a million people who are on the East Coast are like, this was fine. It was 9 a.m.
Yeah.
People in England are like, it was 6 p.m. for me. It was perfect. I was
Totally
after
okay.
dinner. It's totally okay. Like, your time zone creation is going to vary wildly.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think everything they're doing is better. I think the 24-hour thing would have been better if it wasn't so terribly boring. And at the very end, all we got was like one ponytail with a tail, one ponytail without a tail, and then it was like 2 weeks of people defending whether the tail was supposed to be there or not.
I think the issue was like they had presented the 24 hours as a nature, tune in the video and let it run in the background.
Right.
And then everybody assumed it was going to be full of new Pokemon, and it wasn't. And people are like, well, I sat here and watched it for 24 hours. So like, well, or you could have done what I did, is just let the 24 hours happen and then tune into the people who are like, this is the one thing they showed. I'm like, cool, thanks for doing that for me.
Thank you for letting me know. Thank you for doing the job for me.
Thank you for ruining your life when you could have done what I done and waited until the company said, well, this is what was in the 24 hours and put it on the webpage after it was done.
Yeah, it was going to be on Sarumi within 5 seconds of the thing
Correct.
ending
The minute
anyway.
it
So
showed,
why
I'm
not?
like,
Yeah.
I'll get an alert on Twitter. New Pokemon showed at 24:23 in the trailer. It doesn't have a tail.
Yeah.
But yeah, what Roger said was during the Sun and Moon era, they were showing like 5 things a week.
Yeah.
You could go back to that year, and from the time they announced Sun and Moon, it just felt like every single week they had something to show, and it wasn't. It was never one thing. It was always 2, 3, 4 things.
Also, that era was wild because, like, it's not so much the case now versus back then, but like Koro was still a thing, right? Where things were dropping in Koro before they were announced online. So we would get official information like days before the company would even announce it. And that was exciting. I remember like looking up the scans on Twitter that people would post up and having this weird like fuzzy version of something that is official, right? We know it's going to be real. It's not like it's a fake leak. And sitting there being like, what the heck is this? What's its ability? I can't read Japanese. Somebody translate this. And then there being all this information and this sort of news cycle for about 3 days of this exciting, cool new thing. And then you get the official reveal from Pokemon Company, and you get that exciting moment of seeing like the full reveal for the first time, the Sugimori art, the ability, all the information. And it was like things lingered on for a little while longer. Whereas now, like, the conversation about Greavard is kind of already ended, right? You saw it, it's cute, everyone's talked about it, they moved on, and they're ready for the next thing already. And I kind of miss the days of like it being a 3-4 day kind of news cycle.
Yeah, I think we had a little bit of that with the mouse and the parrot and the weird salt cube.
I do. I love the little twin mice, whatever those things are. I want to use them.
Whether that or was intentional or not, because it was in the English trailer, it wasn't in the Japanese trailer. I can't imagine. I mean, I can't imagine that they didn't watch that a million times before they hit publish, but maybe they forgot. I mean, they forgot to animate a ponytail tail.
As a person who does things for a living that I send through quality check, you would be surprised that even 15 people looking at it be like, I never saw that.
To be fair, that reminds me, like, way back in the day of Super Smash Bros. Brawl, there was like a brief trailer they showed. This was prior to the game releasing, right? And people were still trying to figure out what characters were in it. And I'm pretty sure the Bulbacast episode I was talking about, we talked about this exact thing I'm going to bring up, which was in the trailer, they showed a brief glimpse of like the stickers. I don't know if you remember this, but in Brawl, there were like the little stickers you would put on the bottom of the trophies.
Oh, yeah,
and they would give different abilities. And the stickers would tell you what Pokemon and trophies they would be compatible with to give you the best possible thing. And if you watched this trailer, there was a little, very small head of Lucario in this trailer prior to us knowing Lucario was going to be playable, and it was next to Pikachu and Jigglypuff, and everyone was freaking out. They're like, oh my god, Lucario is going to be a playable character in Brawl, this is amazing. And again, that must have gone through so many different quality checks at Nintendo, but it just happened to slip because somebody wasn't looking at the menu of the debug version that they took the footage from.
Right, yeah. I would love to like. That would be the Netflix documentary I'd want to watch, is like who is working at these companies to be like, yeah, we purposely left that in to cause chaos with,
right.
like the hardcore fans. I would love to hear about that kind of stuff. Speaking of new stuff coming out, Zoroark is in Pokemon UNITE, and I thought this was going to be a little bit of a short news article, and then they decided to make Zoroark one of the most expensive characters.
Oh. My
not
goodness.
Only can you just not buy Zoroark, you have to buy him with a premium skin.
That stinks.
Yeah, it's bad. It's really not great. It's bad. Like, I cannot believe it's $20.
Yeah, here, let me just lay out the pricing here.
$20.
So Zoroark will be 14,000 Eos gems. This is the new thing they've been doing with the last couple characters, which, when the game first came out, 10,000 was the cap. And even Charizard was like, I think he's only 8,000. He's not even the most expensive. So 8,000 Eos coins, 14,000 Eos coins, or 575 Eos gems. That's the paid only currency.
Yep.
Zoroark will only be obtainable with Eos gems as part of a Halloween bundle for 1625 gems for the first 7 days of release, which to translate to American money, that is about $20.
So you don't have to buy this in the first 7 days, though, right?
You don't.
You
No.
could just use your coins after the event runs out, and Zoroark is obviously always going to be part of the game now. So
Right.
just wait
The
7
question
days.
is how much the coins are going to be,
Yeah.
because that also keeps increasing.
Yeah.
It's like getting harder and
worse.
harder to get coins.
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
it's harder to get coins, but also the prices for the Pokemon are going up. Like, I haven't seen a new one released that's like, here's 8,000 coins for this one. Like, it's 10, 12, 14, 18. Like, these are a lot of coins. And I think it's because people are sitting on coins because there's literally nothing else to spend the coins on that anybody wants. So they just keep ratcheting up the price to try to fix their economy. But I just don't know that Zoroark has the draw yet, because it's good in game, but nobody. Because it's so expensive, of the ones I play, because I play a lot and I play at least 3 matches every day. I've been in a match with it once, and I've been against it once. And in the 3 or 4 days since it's been out, whereas when Clefairy came out, the game's lousy with Clefairies. There's Clefairies everywhere.
Interesting.
And there's just not a lot, because I don't know that anybody really knows.
Do you think it's because Zoroark's not good, or do you think it's because it's $20?
I think it's because it's $20.
Yeah, I would agree. That's probably the case.
What I've seen from how Zoroark plays, Zoroark is good. Although one can argue if the illusion ability is actually doing its job.
Well, isn't Clefairy's ability just to pick a random Unite?
Yeah, Clefairy's Unite is terrible. But the rest of what Clefairy does is godlike.
Yeah, I was going to say Clefable is one of those Pokemon that in every single game it's ever in, it's always good.
Yeah.
Like, it's good competitively, it's good. You do Calm Mindset, you could play it in Unite, you could play it in literally anything. If Clefable gets added to the game, you know it's worth your money.
Yeah,
I'm right there with you, too, with Zoroark, because I play Pokemon Unite all the time. I normally use Talonflame, but I guess, like, whenever they add the new Pokemon to the game, it's never been that big of an issue for me, because I consider Unite the same way I consider a lot of the other games that I play that have battle passes, whether that's, like, Multiverses, whether that's Overwatch, right? Like, all of these games have battle passes now and paid content, and a lot of it's like, you get this character before anybody else can play this character. And I'm like, well, I don't care. Like, I don't know this character. I'm good with Talonflame. Like, I'm good with Junkrat. Like, I don't need, you know what I mean? Like, I don't need this new character right away. I want to figure out if this character is going to be competitively viable before I plop down money on the thing anyway. And by the time people have done their videos and done breakdowns, then I'm aware of the fact that, okay, this thing is going to be good. And by that point, usually there's like some type of price price cut on the character. So this really kind of only affects the most hardcore of the hardcore, the quote-unquote like whales, right? Who, where there's a new character in a gacha game, they put the money down, they want to get that character, get it guaranteed. I think the thing that's kind of scummy about this is tying it behind like a special skin or whatever. That's the HoloWare bundle, right?
The HoloWare bundle is bad.
That's what
also,
sucks.
The other issue is that it seems Zoroark is shut down hard by Clefable, which is literally the most popular supporter, the best supporter that's in the game right now.
Yeah.
Like, Clefable shuts down literally everything, but when you released a new thing, you've charged it this much money, and its biggest counter is the most prevalent supporter in the game, and Clefable doesn't even need to level past 6 to literally shut down everybody's game. Like, Clefable doesn't even attack. It just follows one person around and heals and puts down gravity wells, and you are dead for the rest of the game. And Zoroark comes in and it's like, guess what the hard counter for Zoroark is? The one thing that's winning games right now, since they've once again nerfed Mr. Mime and put Mr. Mime back in his place, is Clefable.
I think everyone was happy with that Mr. Mime nerf.
Oh, everybody is.
Yeah. Universally.
They need to hit Mr. Mime harder and Mew harder, and I don't think anybody would be upset because those two things are an absolute
like
menace.
5 Mr. Mime players are upset, but the rest of the world is very happy.
The rest of the world's like, thank you. But yeah, Zoroark feels like a weird... It came at a weird time for a really bad price. And unlike every other new character where you see a lot of them the first day, I have seen almost none. And I think it's because it's hard countered by the most popular supporter, and it's so expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like...
really bad.
I'm kind of in the same camp as Roger. Like, there's a lot of Pokemon that they'll add that I just know that's not my playstyle. I have zero interest in dropping gems or coins or anything like that. Or I'll wait maybe until it's on a discount. I think the thing that at this point gets me excited, like every time they add new HoloWare, I'm like, did they add new Cramorant HoloWare? No. Okay. Well, like I don't really care that much. Like I know the meta is still in a weird place for that game already, and it sounds like Clefable has made that even weirder. In a sense. So, like, the question I have is, are they going to do that with future, like when Sableye eventually comes out, because we know Sableye is next, are they going to attach here's a $20 bundle for a skin that you probably won't like? I think the Zoroark skin is bad, by the way. I don't think it's a great HoloWare.
Yeah. I mean, I have seen the leak of the Sableye skin. I'm assuming based off of how they did Zoroark, it is going to be the same issue.
Like a bundle.
Yeah, I have a feeling because they did it here. But my question is I don't know that this was a success for them. So there is a slight chance in my heart that they won't bundle it because I don't think that this was a huge win for them.
Yeah,
I don't think this was a big money seller, except for the few people that did buy it.
But like, I guess we don't know what the translation to like whales to players are, because like when the $40 Ninetales skin came out, people were like, "Don't buy this! Can't believe they're charging $40 for it." But like, there has been many $40 skins since. And the game I always think of and the game I always bring up is like Apex Legends, where you pay $20 for a gun skin or $40 for or not 40, but like probably $20 for a skin there too. And for 3 years, people are like, "Don't buy these skins," but like they've never changed the prices.
No, because they know people are going to spend money,
right?
Which like. Again, if people are going to spend money, they're going to keep doing it. They're going to keep ratcheting up the prices. It's going to continue to happen. I think it's just going to take like one character, kind of going back to what Greg was saying, that everybody likes, that universally from the get-go, first day, the people who do spend the money are like, "Oh my God, this character's kind of broken," and everybody goes to download it, and then it becomes like a greater issue. But I think for the time being, like I'm certainly not clamoring for Zoroark. Now, if this was Hisuian Zoroark, I might have felt differently. I think that design is amazing. Then maybe we would be having a different conversation. Yeah. But as it is right now, again, I'm saving my money, and when they have a discount Eos gem thing and I've got them built up, then great, I'll spend my money. But until then, I'm good.
The weird thing about the $40 skins is as long as they've sold 2, they probably made their investment back. Because I will tell you, those high-priced skins, I never see them in game.
What? I literally every one of the World Championship was running all the 40. All those pro players were running $40 skins.
I play multiple matches every day, and I do not see those expensive skins on people.
It's funny the way I consider it, right? Whether it's again something like Overwatch or Pokemon is. I think I probably would be one of the people who would have bought like a $40 skin if it was a really, really cool, like one-of-a-kind Talonflame skin, right? Like I play Talonflame all the time. The game is free, right? You could download Pokemon Unite and play it for free. I play for free all the time. If they eventually released like a one-of-a-kind amazing skin for the one character that I play all the time in game, I would probably feel like, you know what, I've put 60, 70, 80 hours into this game that normally I would buy a game for $50 and maybe play it for 15 hours and then be done with the whole campaign. For me, it's like, okay, well, I've put enough hours into the game that I can justify myself spending $40 on this one thing that I really, really want. But again, it's not the people like me they're concerned about. It's the people that buy every skin, that want to have everything in the game. And for the people that play it at Worlds, right, I think it's the same situation. They put thousands of hours into this to be on a world stage. They're going to put the $40 in to buy
I also have a strong feeling that they didn't pay for those skins.
That too. Yeah, they probably got provided. Hashtag
like,
Pokemon Partner, hashtag free game, hashtag free product. Exactly. All the FTC guidelines.
The thought that they have all spent $40 on skins for a game that the skins don't matter because they're competitive. There's no way they did not get gifted those games so they could be shown off.
That's true.
So people like you could say, well, the people at World paid $40 a skin for them. So apparently everybody else should buy $40 skins.
They had it. They were winning with it. So in Apex Legends, I purchase every skin for my favorite character in that game. Well, not purchase, but like you get currency in that game. You can use the currency to unlock. I think Overwatch has that too, where you save up enough currency.
Well, not anymore. Now it's the Overwatch 2 Battle Pass thing is like a whole other conversation. But
so for Apex, that's crypto, and I feel the same way in Pokemon Unite. I'm coming back to the game because Cramorant has a skin in this thing that you have to, this cake thing. You got to do the cake thing. You unlock the skin, coming back, cool. But I am sure that there are, because before microtransactions existed, if Pokemon Unite was a $60 game and had no microtransactions, I would be the person that would be like, I'm going to unlock every skin for every character.
Sure.
Yeah. That doesn't exist because you need to do money. Well, that does exist. You just have to do it with money now. But I am sure there are whales or players that they just purchase every single skin.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Whether or not they played Zarina or not, they're going to buy the Zarina skin and never play it. They just want a complete collection. And so I think with these $40 skins, I'm sure they're hitting the mark. I'm sure there's a handful of people that are just, I'm going to buy every single update. I'm going to buy every clothing, every scarf, every shoe, every skin.
Because again, it's a free-to-play game, right? Like the idea that you can download this and put this on your phone or on your Switch or whatever, and it's free initially, makes the player base huge. So literally, if 0.01% of people buy the $40 skin, they're making a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah. Okay, last bit of news before we take a break. They are officially coming out with the Scarlet and Violet cards here. These are going to be available starting on January 6th, so not this year. But the first partner, I think they're called the first partner Paldea collection, Sprigatito, Fuecoco, Quaxley will join. They'll come with the pins. They'll come with oversized cards. They will come with 4 booster packs, so they haven't said what booster packs they're going to be. I'm assuming they're probably going to be the last recent ones, those like Silver Tempest and Lost Origins probably. So 4 booster packs, code card, Sprigatito, Fuecoco, Quaxley pin, oversized card featuring either Koraidon EX or Miraidon EX, which we don't even know what their types are. Safe to say that they're probably Dragon in game, but yeah, you never know. You look at Solgaleo and you're like, that should be a fire Pokemon because the sun and stuff, and it didn't end up being fire. So who knows what their types are? So that'd be January 6th for those coming out, which is you know, when anytime I read TCG news, I just remembered that they announced Pokemon Trading Card Game Live last year. It was supposed to come out in October. It is now the end of October, a year later, and it's still not out.
Part of me is thinking they're doing that to wait until the launch of all this new stuff, like the Scarlet and Violet things that they announced at Worlds this year. Like, I mean, that was a huge moment for me. Like, I was somebody who I love the video games and I love the card game. I like all the news. But the thing that was most exciting to me at Worlds was not like Cyclozor or whatever when they announced that during the Scarlet and Violet thing. It was bringing back EX. Because that was like around the time when I was growing up. You had the e-reader stuff that was coming out. They had introduced the EX things for the first time. And I was stoked to be like, all right, now we're going to get like Mimikyu EX and all these other new forms. The thing that weirds me out about this is, like you said, they're probably going to have the Silver Tempest cards or whatever as part of these booster packs in these collections. Correct me if I'm wrong. Are those cards not going to be part of the new meta? Like with EX, like are those going to be allowed even in game, like in those decks? Or is this sort of going to be a complete new shift? Because it's going to be weird if you've got like these VMAX cards that are in Silver Tempest that are in the same collection that now have EX cards, which probably won't be the same meta when we're at Worlds next year in Yokohama.
A lot of VMAX cards will probably still be legal until August. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay then. Okay.
And then after August, they'll probably cut most, if not all, VMAX. What they normally do though when they switch this, because they'll. Maybe like older TCG players listening to the podcast will remember they had Pokebodies and Pokeabilities. They just changed the word, but they'll word it in a way where like this blocks all Pokebodies or this blocks all Pokeabilities. They've figured out how to word things. So all they need to do with the Paldea set is like, hey, this Pokemon blocks all attacks from VMAX Pokemon, and then people stop playing VMAX because it's like
works. Yeah.
They do really. If we give the Pokemon Company credit for anything, they're very good at like forcing you to buy new cards.
The new meta, yeah.
So Silver Tempest does come out in 12 days. It's going to feature over 190 cards.
They look amazing, by the way. I was seeing like some of the full art that's on Twitter of this. There's the new Lugia card that's in there. There's like a Mewtwo one, the Mewtwo V-Star full art and the Charizard V-Star full art, where it's Mewtwo and Charizard fighting each other, but you see the different perspectives of the fight with the main Pokemon in the foreground. It looks incredible.
Yeah,
so
really
I don't know how rare those are going to be, but I want those so badly.
So this is the last set for Sword and Shield before they rotate over into the Paldea stuff. So exciting. Although Silver Tempest is a little big, 190 cards is kind of a slog, but I personally think they've been doing a good job with the trainer gallery stuff. I don't know if there's trainer gallery in Silver Tempest. I'm assuming there is. I haven't looked up the set list for it. I feel like I have more fun with the TCG not looking up the set list, but
definitely. Yeah, discovering something and going, this could fit in one of my decks right now, or this is like such a cool thing that I want to make a deck for it. Like I think when they had the Go set come out, whenever that was, like 6 months ago or something, when Go came out, I didn't see the set list at all, and I was opening packs on stream, hashtag Pokemon Partner or whatever. I got to get my FTC guideline thing in there, but I'm opening the packs on stream, and Lunatone and Zoroark I saw for the first time in their abilities, and I'm like, man, this card seems really, really good. So I made a deck for it. Come to find out, like 3 weeks later, when everyone has access to the cards, like, oh, this is the meta. If you want a good, cheap budget deck that destroys things, like do Lunatone and Zoroark. And so having those 3 weeks where I was kind of unaware that was even going to be part of the new meta was really exciting to me.
Yeah. So yeah, Silver Tempest November 11th, and then the Paldea stuff January 6th.
Great.
For your dates.
I can't believe they didn't leak a Pokemon in these pictures of these cards. Missed opportunity.
Which Pokemon?
They could have hidden it.
I'm just looking at the backs of Pokemon cards in this mock-up of the art, and they could have at least slipped one. They could have put like the mouse Pokemon on the card, something to generate excitement in this press release. Instead, it's just a bunch of cards that show me nothing.
Yeah, you know.
It's terrible.
I would like to get back into the TCG, so hopefully the EX. Look, maybe
I
eventually
love it right now.
When
it's so good.
they eventually launch that TCG Live whenever that's coming. I mean, you can get the beta.
Out. Is that still only in Canada?
It is in Canada and Mexico and some other places. Look, it's very easy to get into the beta if you want to. The problem is if you decide to move your PTCGO account into PTCG Live, you cannot go backwards. So you are stuck there, and then that separates the player base, right? Because you have some players in PTCGO, and then you have some players in PTCG Live, and everything. I think the actual serious players are still in PTCGO. So.
Correct. I just want everything to transfer over.
I'm looking at the Silver Tempest Trainer Gallery, and there's 2 cards that you need to give me. So.
Oh yeah, there's Trainer Gallery stuff. Yeah. Okay. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk all about Scarlet and Violet, and then we'll do our question of the week, and we'll wrap up. So we will be right back.
Sounds good.
And we are back from our break. All right. So 20 Pokemon in. We're less than when this podcast goes up, we'll be 17 days away from Scarlet and Violet. What are your thoughts, Roger? Are you excited?
On Scarlet and Violet? In general? Yeah, of course I'm excited. What's a new Pokemon game? Of course. I don't think there's ever been in the history of a mainline Pokemon game a game that I wasn't excited for. I mean, I grew up with the series. I initially played the trading card game when I was in elementary school and then got into the video games and then got gifted my Game Boy Color Special Pikachu Edition 1999 Christmas with the little Jigglypuff and Togepi and Pikachu on it, and I've literally been playing ever since. I mean, I can't wait. And I think the big thing about this one, too, is because it's open world, I am super excited to stream it because I feel like instead of me just going through the storyline like I normally do, this is content for months, right? This is me doing raids, inviting other people on, battling, getting every single badge, doing everything that I possibly can, trying to fill out the Pokedex. I've been lucky with the past 3, I've actually completed the Pokedexes for, which was unheard of when I was a little kid. I think I did that for Gen 1, Gen 2, and then I don't think I ever did it again until Let's Go Pikachu. And then I've been doing it. No, that's not true. Sun and Moon. Alola, I completed the Pokedex in Sun and Moon as well. And then now I've been doing it ever since. So I will probably continue that trend with Scarlet and Violet, depending on how many Pokemon are in the Pokedex.
Yeah. For those maybe unfamiliar with your content, what is your favorite generation of game?
Ooh. I'd say if you're including the remakes, I would say Gen 4. Just because Gen 4 was the first time you actually had Wi-Fi, I still think to this day, in terms of any remake game for any franchise, Heart Gold and Soul Silver is my gold standard, no pun intended. I feel like those games did so many things right, had so much extra content, were so much fun to play, and kind of everything from then on out in terms of remakes left me disappointed. I'm somebody that was not a fan of Oris at all. I was left severely underwhelmed by that game. And all the other second versions of games since then, I feel like Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon wasn't quite different enough. I loved the expansion pass stuff that was with Sword and Shield, but I don't know. I think Gen 4, there was just a special little element of je ne sais quoi that was in there with the Wi-Fi connection, having God as a Pokemon with Arceus and introducing, I think that legendary trio of Giratina, Dialga, Palkia was so cool. But if you're removing the remakes from it, and I don't know if this is a popular opinion, unpopular opinion, whatever, I would say my other favorite generation is Gen 5. I think Gen 5 is so cool. I loved the storyline with N. I think those are games where, in terms of the second game, they did a lot of things different, and that's kind of the gold standard for how I'd want a sequel game to be, which is, I think, why I was disappointed with Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon when it was it's mostly the same game, except for, the rocket stuff near the ending and the Mantine surfing. Whereas, Black and White 2 are straight up different. You have a totally new rival, all these new areas. It's a sequel to the actual original game, so different areas have changed, certain cities have grown, some have fallen into ruin. I love everything about Black and White too. So I'm gonna say overall Gen 5 is my answer for my favorite generation. Yeah.
Black and White 2 were great. I love those games.
Love them.
Although I don't think I still have never finished White 2.
Really? You should go back and play.
Black 2. And I think I'm 3/4 of the way through White 2, and then I put it somewhere in my house. And I don't know where that is. Come to think of it.
So
Where did I put that?
You slightly mentioned the DLC stuff of Sword and Shield. So do you think that you think that is the right direction, or do you like to see like a Platinum or
No.
Okay.
I love Platinum. I love Platinum. Platinum is absolutely the definitive version of Gen 4. Emerald is the definitive version of Gen 3. Absolutely. There is no argument. Those two games are superior. But if we are getting things like Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, if that's what those kind of games would be like in the future, I don't want it. I would much rather have DLC for a game that I already have that just adds a couple new things, adds some new Pokemon, adds some new areas. I don't have to buy a whole new game. I can just buy the little expansion pass thing and I'm good. So long as there's enough content in the original version of the game that keeps me satisfied. Like, I would hate it if they just decide, okay, well, we know we're going to do DLC, so we're going to keep this big extra portion just separate for this, and then have like a completely empty post game. That I don't like. I like there at least to be some post game in the base game.
I am worried that DLC is replacing initial post game.
Yes, I agree.
I am worried that initial post game for Scarlet and Violet will just be competitive, and there won't be anything else until DLC. Because we kind of ran into that with Sword and Shield a little bit. Like there was some, but not a lot, and then. We got two very good, I mean, one was better than the other, but both were pretty good DLCs. Yeah. And I'm concerned that the lesson learned was that people will buy it and they don't have to focus on a post game to fill the gap because people will come back for it. Because that tends to be how companies do things.
Yeah, I mean... That goes back to the interview where they were like, no one played the Battlefront here, so we're not going to do it in the future. And
that's wild, too, considering, like, the core memories I have of Emerald and Heart Gold Soul Silver were playing the Battlefront tier. I loved that stuff.
Everybody who loves Emerald loves the Battlefront tier.
Yeah,
but
it's
Emerald
awesome.
sold less. So it's like...
Emerald sold less, and you're assuming that everyone who bought it made it to the end of the game, which is just not true.
Ludicrous. And also, I'm sure it sold less just because of Gen 3. I mean, you look at that point in Pokemon history, there was unequivocally sort of a lull, right, that was happening. You saw it across the board. You saw it with the TCG. You saw it with the video games. Like, I even remember being in school, everybody being obsessed with Gen 1 and Gen 2, me being in, like, middle school, going into early high school, playing Gen 3, and nobody was really playing it, and then come Gen 4, I'm kind of the odd man out until like DS really explodes. And by like my junior, senior year, when everybody's playing on a DS, then everybody was playing Gen 4 and couldn't wait for Gen 5, which then brought me to my college years. But I feel like Gen 3, just because of a lot of different factors, whether that's like the technology moving into like the Wi-Fi era with all the stuff that was happening in Gen 4, the dip in popularity slightly, there were a lot of different factors, and I do not think them pinning the Battle Frontier as the reason why people didn't buy Emerald as much, that's wrong.
It's one of those things where you always question why a corporation decides, oh, well, we learned this lesson from that. And I'm like, was that the lesson you should have learned? Because most people who are very deep into those games were like, that's not the lesson I would take away. The lesson you needed to look at was your marketing around the age groups that you were going with, because they all hit high school and you didn't have, you hadn't hit a generation yet.
Yes.
Like, it's the Disney lull. Like, they're just now beginning to understand the Disney lull. Like, you'll see a dip in Disney movies for a while as they focus on the Marvel things, because that is the bridge group. And then suddenly we have princess movies coming back when there's 10-year-olds again. Like, Disney understands the generational and how to keep their audience going, that Nintendo, particularly the Pokemon Company, only has just now figured out.
Yeah. You are, as soon as you brought up the Disney comparison, the former Disney employee in me is like, my heart was just warming, because that's definitely, that's it. I mean, that's exactly what it is, right? Is that you had the Disney Renaissance when I was growing up, go into like the Lilo and Stitch, Treasure Planet kind of era where things lulled, and then boom, Tangled, Frozen, it all came back again. And now people would argue it's sort of going back into another valley, and it's going to pick back up again. And these things move in waves.
They hit they hit the Frozen market.
Right.
That was the edge of that. So now they're shifting to all superhero stuff because they're getting the teens and the young adults.
Right.
And then those kids will make unfortunate decisions and have children of their own, and then there'll be another slew of kids movies.
There you go. Yeah.
And in the meantime, they plug it up with other products. Like Pixar makes movies that are very good at bridging both generations.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like Pixar has an adult reputation for kids' movies. So they rely on their other properties to plug in those holes. Yeah. And like Disney is, like, if you want to look at machines, for as much as Pokemon's media empire is a machine, it pales in comparison to how well. There are two large entities out there that know generations really, really well. One of them is Disney and the other is the Army. And those two work generations like nobody else does. They understand how each generation ticks, they understand what each generation needs, and they understand how to market specifically to those generations. And it's really hard for people to be like, well, you know, it just wasn't cool for Gen 3. It's like, no, it's because you were a teen,
right,
and they didn't understand how to market to you. Because the games didn't change at all.
Nope.
They're the same games, and the same games that you're obsessed with now, the formula existed. You were just an angsty teen, and they had no idea how to market to you because they were new.
Yeah. And I think you hit on something else that was interesting, too, which is that, like, there's kind of these games that bridge the gap and are in between. I kind of feel like that's what they're trying to hit with Legends. Because I think Legends, you're hitting on the nostalgia, but you're hitting it on an older demographic that wouldn't necessarily go back and like play a remake of, like, they wouldn't go back and play Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl with the cute little chibi art style the same way a kid would. But when they're like, oh, that's the generation that I remember, and these are like the Pokemon that I remember, but there's like this cool new story and it's open world, you're getting those people into it. So I truly feel, I don't know if you guys talked about it, I'm sure you did ad nauseum on the show when Legends first came out earlier this year. I think Legends is like one of the smartest things Pokemon Company's done in years, because that allows them to still remake the games for, like you were saying, Greg, the people who are kids who are playing this stuff for the first time, things like Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, whatever, those games are not for us. Then you've got the Legends games, which again bridge the gap, and then the new generation that brings everybody in. So yeah, I can't wait to see what they do, whether it's like Legends Unova or whatever.
Yeah, I look at things like Pokemon Conquest and Mystery Dungeon as like their first attempts at like figuring out how to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Because they are more complicated than your base game, and they are more series that were more popular with that teen to 20-year-old demographic in Japan. So like you can see their first forays into it with those games, and I think they've now just begun to figure it out. Like, okay, we are a generational product. We know we're a generational product now. We understand that we can hit these things. Pokemon Go carried the ball for us over the last hurdle. That it brought it plugged the hole perfectly for us. But now it's 6 years old and has come up in a retro list game on my iPhone. Hey, play retro games, and Pokemon Go is on there, and that was just 6 years ago. That's not retro.
No, retro's 10, so they got a couple more years to go still.
Brent sent it to me. He's like, what is this garbage on my phone? And I'm like, it is 6 years old. He's like, there's no possible way that it was 6 years old. I'm like, again, time doesn't exist for the last 3 years. It's all a blur.
Yep.
Well, I think to go back to like hitting, like knowing their audience, and like understanding their audience better. If you look at Scarlet and Violet, kind of one of the complaints is that we kind of now know that the gyms don't scale appropriately,
right?
And that you'll go to Brassius will be 17, 18, 20, whatever his levels are. And then he will always be that. So you can skip Brassius, you can go to somebody else, you can go back to Brassius, he's still going to be the same level. And, there are some people that are upset about that. There are some people that are in the camp that they don't really mind. But I think the reason... and the feeling I got from playing that game for an hour is it's not really about satisfying those hardcore players of like, I want every gym to be the correct level, and I want to go to the Dragon Gym first, and I want to go to the Grass Gym last, but I want to make sure the Grass Gym is level 50 and the Dragon Gym's level... I think they understand that if they need to get old players back, they need that classic experience. And the gym thing is the thing it is just the classic experience where if somebody skips Sun and Moon, somebody skips Sword and Shield, they're coming back to an open world Pokemon game. They still want a feeling of like, I remember doing the gyms. Yeah. And my takeaway from playing Scarlet and Violet was we keep the gyms classic, but we have the Team Star stuff, which is the something totally different that you can also do in any order. And we have the Titan stuff, also something different that you can do in any order. And the thing that stood out to me is when I fought that Titan Cloth, he didn't have a level, and he doesn't have a level in the trailer. And when I asked Nintendo, I was like, hey, what's Cloth's level? And they were like, oh, Titan Pokemon don't have levels. And I'm like, oh, maybe the Titan Pokemon are the ones that are scaling to be the difficult thing. Because you don't want everything to scale, but you don't want nothing to scale. So I think they understood that balance. And I think when you're dramatically changing your game from not being open world for 25 years to now being open world, you still need to have traditional elements to it, which for better or worse, I think is the correct approach. I think they are understanding that people are coming back to our games, and not every Pokemon fan is playing every single Pokemon game. People maybe listening to this podcast are playing every single Pokemon game, right. But that's not 26 million. I wish we had 26 million listeners, but Sword and Shield sold 26 million copies, and not all 26 million people completed the game. Not all 26 million people bought the DLC. Not all 26 people thought Pokemon was too hard. Not all 26 million people thought Pokemon was too easy. Like, they're making a game to hit as many people as they want because they're a business and they want to sell as many copies. And like, I don't think level scaling the gyms is the answer to selling more copies or the like difficulty that people are really looking for. Which puts me on a whole nother rant of like, I don't think people really want difficult. I think people want to be surprised. Like, and I think a really good example of that was Ultra Necrozma and Sun and Moon. You can beat Ultra Necrozma, maybe after your second try. He's probably going to catch you off guard.
Single sucker punch from Decidueye. That's all it took for me. Everybody talks about that Ultra Necrozma fight, and that goes back to Ultra Sun and Moon, and I was like, I don't even understand what people are talking about. Again, maybe it's just because like who I started the game with, but Decidueye, it was like one and done instantly. I never even thought about it afterwards, and then it became a topic of conversation. Like after about a year, everyone's like, "That Ultra Necrozma fight, wasn't that incredible?" I'm like, "Bro, what are you talking about?"
Yeah,
like, it was fine. Like, so yeah, like you said, people have varying ideas of like what the difficulty are exactly. Yeah,
I beat Ultra Necrozma with a level 14 Basculin, and it's just because, I understand how it works, right? I understand that, like, he's going to go first, I'm going to have a Focus Sash, I'm going to, like, retaliate. Like, you can do it a variety of ways, right?
Oh, yeah.
But that fight's not particularly hard. Like, there might be somebody listening that's like, oh, I lost, like, 8 or 9 times, and, like, understandable. Like, you might not have the right Pokemon, the right levels, the understanding of type effectiveness. But, like, no one wants to lose in a Pokemon match like 10 times in a row to like you lose once and you're like, he caught me off guard. I think that's what people want. They want that like surprise. They want to be caught off guard.
Ring. They want Elden Ring is what they want. And realistically,
Elden Ring is losing 17 times in a row until you finally figure out the pattern. I mean, that's Dungeons. I disagree that people don't want difficulty. I think a bunch of people do like to be surprised, but I do think there's a handy amount of people that like, I want to be surprised and also have a tough puzzle to figure out. Like, I think about the Mewtwo raids that were in Sword and Shield. That was a tough puzzle to figure out. But once everybody figured out the puzzle, people were still doing them.
But some of that puzzle was limitation of Pokemon. Right. Like if you had Marshadow, that puzzle was significantly easier, and there were just some people that I would queue up with, and they wouldn't have good counter. They wouldn't have like Marshadow.
Right. But again, that's also the difficulty of figuring out the puzzle. But that's MMO game design. That's dungeon design. That is it has a set pattern that you have to learn, and then once you learn it, you can execute that pattern. That is a difficulty level, and it's different than surprise. Surprise is the initial thing that gets you excited. The difficulty is figuring out the puzzle. The problem is that we've known the puzzle of Pokemon for 25 years now.
Right.
Like, we know what the puzzle is.
I still think Alternate Necrozma is that big surprise, though, for sure.
No, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, you hear people talk about, I did that and I solved the puzzle and did it once. It's not like people were like, I'm going to keep requeuing for Alternate Necrozma 17 times because the drops are so good.
But like I think and I had a huge argument with people on Twitch about this. I think comparing Elden Ring to Pokemon is completely fair and valid,
especially now. Now,
like somebody was like, "Well, Elden Ring doesn't even have levels." I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, you could be level 40 in that game. You could be you can be 160 in that game.
Yeah.
Like, if you fight the Moon Girl with the feet, I never remember her name. She's like the second main boss.
Right. The library girl.
The library girl. You can fight her in any order too. Like, you can fight her at level 40. You can fight her at level 100. Obviously, she's going to be way easier you're at level 100. But also, like, if you struggle with that fight, you can change your weapons. You can bring different weapons. You can equip different amulets. Most fights in Elden Ring, even if you can't learn the pattern, you can still brute force it through your potions, which is like the same thing as Pokemon. You can brute force fights with max potions. You can you can go back and like, if you're struggling with Blaine, go catch 6 water Pokemon. The game's not stopping you from doing that. You don't have to go in with like a Venusaur or like you have, and maybe the games have to get to but I don't think the game should get to a point where you're struggling with a gym leader so much that you're like, I need to redo my entire team. Like, I don't think people really want that.
Well,
I think both of you are hitting on things that are important. Craig, I think like what you mentioned about people knowing the puzzle for 20 years is the difference compared to something like Elden Ring or a FromSoft game. Because all of these different mechanics are changing. You've never experienced a character that hits you at this time. Your timing's different. Whereas like with Pokemon, like you mentioned with the Alternate Necrozma fight, like if you know the tech of Focus, Sash, and Endeavor or Retaliate or whatever, like you can get through pretty much anything very quickly. You could do like the type effectiveness for the last 20 years has not changed. Like there's no difference. There've been new types. There's Fairy now with like Poison and Steel, but it's essentially the same thing. Nothing's really changing there. I think going back to what I was saying at the beginning of this conversation with like my favorite generation, something I think Gen 5 really succeeded at, which I am shocked this has never been brought in again, ever, since this got introduced, was challenge mode. That you beat the game for the first time, and built into the game, there's a thing where it's like, you want to play again? Now you've unlocked hard mode. Play the whole game on hard mode. Levels are higher, everything's more difficult now. I think if they brought that back into a mainline Pokemon game, a lot of these conversations about the games being too easy, EXP share is forced, like, these would be removed to a certain extent. Whereas I think, going to what you were saying, Steve, like, you could play things out of order, right? Like, say, for example, there's a gym, it's too difficult for you, you want to go play a different gym, fine. Go in the order that they're intending, beat the dude who's like the grass gym leader at level 9 Pokemon or whatever, and you bring in your level 30s and you're fine. Or you could go do other things. And if what you're saying about the Titans is correct, and there's no level to the Titans and those do scale and you could do those in any order, that's great. Because then you could sort of fill out in between going to these different gyms with Titan battles or doing the Team Star areas, and that'll be your gameplay loop until you get to the next gym leader. You don't have to do them all in order. But I think if the game is laid out in a way where it's like, okay, here's the first gym, here's the second gym, and it's naturally pushing you in the direction of like, this is the order to go in, instinctively, people are going to go in that direction because the game was designed to be that. And despite the fact that it's open world, there is still a subsection of people that will do that and are not going to explore. They want to experience the gyms in that order, and then they'll do the Titan stuff, and then they'll do the Team Star stuff. And so I think that's the issue they're going to run into in terms of people actually putting these games in their hands, is those players who haven't played for a while, who know the gym mechanic, but are used to the Team Rocket dungeons and the big Pokemon fights being naturally integrated into the story instead of things that you have to go and explore separately.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where the disconnect's going to happen.
I mean, I think also some people, like the Elden Ring thing works up to a point, but the Elden Ring and a lot of those other games like MMO stuff rely on your skill. They're not turn-based. Like, you can get quicker, faster. They aren't so heavily stuck. And I think the thing that's difficult to grasp in this game is how open the open world will be, because every other game up to this point has gate-kept the types of Pokemon you can get. Like, you can only find certain things on these routes. The wild area only has these certain Pokemon during these weather conditions. And so it is more difficult to comprehend a world where you can leave that area and go find the ones that give you a type matchup, because we haven't had that. And Pokemon isn't a game where your quick reaction skills or your learning the pattern works as it does in things like Elden Ring and MMOs. It is, you have to learn the types, their moves, and the counters, and then make sure you have the Pokemon for those, which have, hopefully up until this game changes, have been gate kept by their routes and what would they allow you to catch in those areas. So the difficulty to make the jump to say that it's like Elden Ring is a skill-based game. MMOs are skill-based games.
Whoa. Pokemon is for sure a skill-based game.
but the PvE isn't that skill-based. Levels still make a huge amount of it. It is still turn-based. And so there's a level of 25 years of gate-kept Pokemon and hard level caps where you have to overlevel it, which means grind. That is difficult to grasp how this game will play out.
I have a question then, because I'm sure you guys would know. Do the wild Pokemon scale? So what Greg was talking about, like, could I go to the mountain area near the end of the game and, like, get a dragon immediately and then come back to, Gym 1 and then raise that dragon up from the very beginning, when normally I would have to, like, wait until after I beaten the game to get a Larvitar, Like,
I don't know, because I play, like, obviously they did a pre-built situation.
Sure.
And my Pokemon were all level 25, and I had no gym badges, and I ran into a level 40 Pokemon, which was around a bunch of level, like, 20 Pokemon. So I'm twice the level.
Sure.
And it didn't prevent me from catching it. I couldn't catch it because I didn't have the right type advantage to do damage. So it wasn't stopping me from catching a level 40 with no gym badges, but I didn't get to that point. I do want to go back with the Elden, like, obviously, like, Elden, like, when you buy Elden Ring, you're buying a game where everyone tells you you're gonna die a bunch. Like, that is part of its marketing, right? Like, when you're going to buy a Pokemon game, they're not going to be like, oh boy, Brassius is gonna run you into the ground 7. Like, that's not part of the marketing. But, like, in Elden Ring, if you are struggling, you can overlevel. Like, you can go to specific level, you can go to specific areas in that game and knock out the same enemy over and over and over and get 5, 10, 15 levels higher than you should be. So, like, Elden Ring is, like, I wouldn't say that Elden Ring is more of a skill-based game than Pokemon. There's different skills. One is more thinking and planning out your turns, and then the other one is more movement and dexterity. But you can still brute force through both games. You can still over-level in both games to brute force if you don't understand the skills they're asking for you.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that, we bump up against the grind, right? Like, the balance of grind versus surprise versus difficulty. Like, everybody wants something different. And I think one of the things that is generally holding Pokemon back, I think, on some level, is the fact that they are still turn-based. Turn-based changes a lot of that calculations to where people, like, if people feel they have more agency because they're not locked into a turn, those defeats feel much more like, I just haven't gotten my skills there. Whereas a turn-based still is, I made the best decision I could on my turn, and I don't have a chance in the turn to compensate for it.
Yes.
I have to wait till my turn comes up. And turn-based is a limiting factor to these games as far as difficulty, as far as surprise, as far as people's agencies in the game. Like, the hope is that the raids will fix that somewhat, like that the not having turns in raids is done in a way that's super fun, and people are like, okay, well, I get that sense from these other things. But I do think at this point, compared to other modern games, you're just not going to get the same level of satisfaction from difficulty from a turn-based game that you are in free combat, free movement, free decisions. Like, if you had the ability to say dodge in the middle of something's turn, like, is a timing button to hit the dodge, or you get X amount of dodges, something to help you do something while you're waiting for the program to play out, it's a very different feel. And I don't know that we'll ever get that with Pokemon games, but I do
like
think
the Mario and Luigi games that have like the built-in dodges and stuff.
Yeah.
The role-playing Mario, the RPG Mario and Luigi games.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that there's just a level of coming to terms with this is a turn-based game, and turn-based games have set limitations.
A turn-based game that has set limitations that a child can play. Right. I think that's the other thing too, is that so many people want so many people want it to be a super difficult RPG kind of experience, but again, like, going back to that Disney comparison, man, you want to get the youth into playing this game. Like, a child is not, I mean, some might, but like, a kid's not going to sit there and play Elden Ring, and you're not expecting some 8-year-old to be able to beat Elden Ring. You are expecting an 8-year-old, if they're playing through Pokemon,
I'm expecting
and they understand
an 8-year-old
mechanics,
to beat me in Fortnite.
Yeah, exactly. Fortnite or like Leon, to be able to beat Leon, right? Like, that should be a easy enough feat for an 8-year-old. And they're designing the game with that in mind, which is why, again, it goes back to that thing with Gen 5. Like, all you need to do is to have something, once you've beaten the game once, right? To have some additional difficulty feature unlock. I think you see this all the time with people who are like, I've beaten the game, now I'm going to do a Nuzlocke run, now I'm going to do whatever. To some extent, people will do like randomizers or whatever things that they want to do to like have these self-imposed rules to make the games more difficult. Whereas if that was something that was built into the game already, this wouldn't even be a conversation. If that was something post-game that all Pokemon games said, here's like the difficulty mode, here's whatever our Nuzlocke would be, but it's actually something designed for the game that is built in that you're meant to play that way as a harder difficulty level, people would do it. You would see all these content creators that are getting in trouble for doing like randomizers or whatever. They would not be getting in trouble anymore because they would be playing the thing that Pokemon has put in the game to make it a higher difficulty level to immediately make more content. So it's almost like a self-imposed restriction on themselves, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I went through all of challenge mode in Black 2 White 2. I didn't find it to be harder personally.
Really?
But I mean, like, I also understand the rules of Pokemon. Like, I mean, like Charon getting one extra Pokemon, and then every other gym leader getting one extra Pokemon, and all the gym leaders having. I think what challenge mode did is it increased all the trainers and all the gym leaders like +3 levels. I think it was either +2 or +3, but all the gym leaders got one extra Pokemon. And I think they had at least like 2, if not higher, perfect IVs on their Pokemon as well. I didn't personally find that to be harder, right? Like if I'm going against Marlin, who's the 8th water type
guy.
The water guy, like I'm going to use Thunderbolt every single time. Like it doesn't matter if you have 4 Pokemon or 5 Pokemon, I'm still going to hit the Thunderbolt button.
But don't you think that to some extent, if they said, okay, you beat the game, and they like literally develop into the game a thing where you go, okay, I'm in this new region, I'm only allowed to catch 1 Pokemon, right? You're only allowed to catch the first Pokemon that shows up on that route. And that's built into the game. That's not a thing like that the player is self-imposing on themselves. That's the thing. And then when that Pokemon, you can't fight with that Pokemon anymore. Obviously, Pokemon Company's never going to be like, well, that Pokemon died, you can't use it anymore. But something to the extent of like, the Pokemon is too tired and needs to go recover into the box, you can't use this Pokemon anymore. like, they could easily find a way to do that makes sense within the canon, the vocabulary of Pokemon. They could,
but they don't need to. They don't need to waste the time on that.
I agree. They don't need to. They don't need to waste the time. But if you want to appeal to that demographic and you want to appeal to the people that like that, that's what you have to do.
But
this goes back to the Battle Frontier thing we were talking about earlier, too. It's like, it's not made for everyone to be able to beat it. It's made for the people who want a challenge. And that's a choice of the Pokemon Company to say, hey, look, we're going to develop this and give you a challenge, or we're not going to worry about this. We're going to implement scaling or do other things to make people play it in their own way. And then the player can decide their own self-imposed rules to play this separately. But again, until they implement that into the game in a way that's actually in the development of the title, this kind of thing's always going to happen.
Yeah, it's weird that New Game Plus has been part of Final Fantasy forever.
Yeah.
And it's only ever in Final Fantasy games.
I
or
think
Xenoblade. It's in Xenoblade too, to be fair.
I think a lot of games do hard mode very poorly. Like when Halo is a good example. Halo is just give the enemies more health, give you less health. Like, I like making things bullet sponges isn't like the answer I'm looking for. I don't think it's an answer a lot of people are looking for. I think a game that does like difficulty well, that doesn't have like a hard mode or easy mode, is like Mario games. Like in Super Mario 64 or Mario Galaxy or Super Mario Sunshine, there were always levels that were significantly harder than other levels. In Sunshine, they would take away your jetpack. And you'd be so accustomed to it, you're like, oh, well, now I don't have like that thing to save me if I accidentally jump the wrong way, right?
Right.
Or, you know, even in like Breath of the Wild, there were dungeons I went into and I was like, I'm too dumb to solve this puzzle. But it's okay because like in both Mario games and Zelda games, you don't have to solve every single puzzle to do. So like I wouldn't want the Pokemon Company to be like, okay, here's a built-in like Nuzlocke mode, because you can just do that yourself, right? I would want areas of the game to be harder. Like I would want them to go back to building like a Battle Frontier or something where it's like you can beat the whole game, it's fine, defeat Leon, you're champion of Galar now, but here's an actual difficult thing that you can do that isn't like I just don't think them wasting time on like a built-in Nuzlocke is ever going to like satisfy those people, because they're still going to have complaints.
But I think the idea of like, oh, they'd be wasting development time doing this. No, they wouldn't. You literally type a rule and develop. Like it's not. They literally don't. Like it'd be different if this was something where they're building out new areas, right? That does take development time. But self-imposing a rule in the game, literally just saying, okay, at this portion, you cannot catch another Pokemon. You cannot do this thing. Would there be instances in which that would be kind of broken? Sure, right? That a player might get stuck with one thing and they need to restart from the beginning. But when the player is signing up to do that optional mode within the game, it wouldn't be an issue because they know what they're signing up for. Like, I think the development thing would definitely be an issue if they are developing something like a Battle Frontier or a new area, which then goes back to their comments of like, well, this was something that not a lot of people played, so we're not going to put the dev time into doing it. But putting a rule in there is not something that would take all this extra development time. That's a relatively simple thing to implement. Obviously, everything takes dev time, but it would not be anywhere near the amount of time they would spend on making some type of new area. And I think you would be able to satisfy a demographic of people that are always looking for more of a challenge in a much easier way, and then spend the rest of your time polishing that core game that everybody's going to enjoy. And on the topic, not to take over, but one last thing I want to say is like on the topic of games that do difficulty well, I think Arceus did it really well. Like, I think going through to that Volo fight, that was a legitimate challenge for somebody who's been playing Pokemon for 20 years. When the Cynthia music kicks in again and you're battling Volo at the end of Arceus, and he whips out the Giratina that then goes like...
Spoiler.
Oh, spoiler. Okay.
No, it's fine.
I'm like, this game has been out for a long enough time. It's fine. But he whips out the Giratina, and then the Giratina changes form, and you can't heal, and you can't, have the full restore after that first fight and the Giratina fight. Now you're in this third fight. Like, that was awesome, right? Like, and I think that even goes beyond the genuine surprise thing you were talking about with Necrozma.
That's funny because I had such an easy time with that fight.
Really?
I had Weird Ear, so he couldn't touch me.
Weird. Oh, so that goes back to maybe what you were talking about then, with that the difficulty is kind of different for everybody.
But I had some newer people in my Twitch chat, and they called me. They said I cheated during that fight because I used a normal type Pokemon.
Bruh, come on.
Yeah.
No. know, that's your lucky your draw. You had a weird deer, and that's great, you know. But,
yeah, I mean, like, yeah, and that's funny. That's funny that we've come full circle of like me saying like the Ultra Necrozma was like, oh, it threw me off, and you saying, oh, you just sucker punched it, and then you saying you
now
struggled
it's like Volo
with
threw me off. Yeah,
and then I was like, oh, I had a weird deer, and I had Ursaluna, both normal type Pokemon. So even if the weird deer died, I had another normal type Pokemon, and Giratina couldn't really touch it. It's like it's really hard to, and I think this is why people go back to Nuzlocks or randomizers, is because you're restricting the Pokemon you have access to, right? I kind of figured, you know, you haven't seen Gary. Like I did catch Weird Deer and I did catch Ursaluna, and I did use those the entire time. But as I started playing through the game, I was like, oh, I'm going to put two and two together that this dude's going to have like Giratina. Like,
of course.
Where else is Giratina going to be? Well, so I have no reason to remove these Pokemon. But I do like those two Pokemon. But, you know, when you're doing, like, a randomizer and, you know, your first Pokemon you catch is a grass and the first gym is a fire, like, yeah, it's hard. But you don't need a randomizer to do that. I mean, if you go to Brock and you bring a Charmander, you're going to have a harder time. The whole conversation revolves around, like, that fight was super hard for you. It was really easy for me, but we just had different Pokemon.
Exactly.
And you could do that for yourself in Scarlet and Violet, right? Like, you can go to Brassius with 3 Pokemon. You can go to him with 6 Pokemon. You can go to him with 1 Pokemon. You can go to him with I don't know if Weedle's in the game, but I'm going to assume if Weedle's in the game and you go to Brassius with Weedle, you're probably going to have a tough time versus if you go to Brassius with, you know, Fuecoco.
That's true.
I do think, like, the puzzle part of this is the terrestrializing. Like, I think that's how they're trying to get surprise in each gym, is that you don't know what they're going to terrestrialize into.
Sure,
like
sure.
They've hinted at it with Brassius' gym, although you could guess that he's going to terrestrialize a rock to grass,
right?
Which doesn't help your gym. But I think that's part of what they're going for with the surprise and upping the difficulty a little. I just think it's everybody's version of what difficult means is wildly different.
Right.
And I think we come down to the point of, at some point, you have to accept the games for what they are. And if it's not serving your needs anymore, maybe it's not where you want to be. Like Temtem exists to deal with what people didn't like about Pokemon, right? Like,
it's true.
Other things have popped in to take place of people saying, I no longer find satisfaction in this type of game style.
Sure.
So now I'm going to go with something else. Like Temtem uses a stamina thing, and you can, instead of running out of moves, you can hurt yourself, and that's part of the strategy, and blah, 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 blah. Like, all the things that it fixes for Pokemon. Like, there's a million games that fix that they didn't like in this other game.
Yeah.
And we want Pokemon to evolve, right? Like, we want it, and we've seen it starting to evolve, but it's never going to, like, Final Fantasy is never going to be beyond what its Final Fantasy roots are, right? Like, at some point, they did abandon turn-based, but the formulas pretty much always stay the same. Like, if you don't want summoners, if you don't want these abilities, this isn't the game for you. Like, if you don't want the same spells being in every game, like, I'm tired of always using Life. I'm tired of always using Kiraga. I'm always tired of using Firaga. These are not the games for you anymore.
Yeah, right.
Like, Dungeons & Dragons has had the same spell list for almost 50 years now. Like, these are not necessarily the games for you if you're over that. If you're over what they offer you,
sure,
it's fine to be like, I loved those games. They no longer meet my needs. And I think the difficulty we have with fans who talk about, I want more difficulty, I want XYZ, they're asking for things that aren't something possible in those games. That's not something that they have stated that they have wished to do. Like, they are not against they're not against that idea, but the reason why you're never going to see Nuzlocke rules is because they didn't develop them. They are easily pointable to a person that created those rules, who owns those rules, whose things you can still find. It's not you can't put fan-made things in your official product without paying the fan.
Though, I'm going to make an argument against that. Because I was in the trenches when this happened. Free-for-alls were a thing during X and Y and going into all this other stuff during that era. Free-for-alls became very popular on YouTube. And then what happened going into Sun and Moon, where you had the 4 players against each other?
The Battle Royale.
Yeah, but...
Bro, there's like a clear-cut correlation between free-for-alls being a thing on YouTube into Battle Royale. And regardless, they'll never admit that that's what it was.
But you could also easily point to free-for-alls exist in a million other areas.
Of course.
Free-for-alls
I think when you look
owned by another person. Like,
no.
capitalizing on
neither was
thing.
Nuzlocke, to be fair.
But
I think Nuzlocke has sort of evolved into a way where it's now its own sort of like side thing where people will do it on YouTube.
Size thing, but the name and the concept it still exists on the internet. The person that created that rule set and named it exists.
Okay. Yeah, we're talking about 2 different things then. I'm not saying make a quote-unquote official Nuzlocke mode. But obviously call it something else. Like, you're not going to call it Nuzlocke.
The difficulty is when it mirrors something that exists, that has been a part of the community for that long, there is no way around pointing it back to the person that did it. Like free-for-alls existed in wrestling, free-for-alls existed on football.
But free-for-alls, the way
everywhere.
they played in Pokemon, where there's double battles and the people on the same side are attacking each other, like that type of thing. I totally agree. Like we are in agreement in terms of the reason they're probably not going to do Nuzlocke stuff is because there's obviously someone you could point to and say this is where it all started. But again, you can't kind of do that with free-for-alls. There were like 3 or 4 YouTubers that started doing free-for-alls that got real popular, and if you just do Pokemon X and Y free-for-all, most recent, whatever, and you scroll down to the oldest video, you can pinpoint where that started pretty easily.
Yeah, but I think the thing that people like talk about those things don't realize is if it's something that somebody has made.
Yes.
And it can clearly point to those people. Like, it does, like, those people didn't make up a free-for-all idea. They capitalized on it, right? Like, we can't say, I don't know, A-Drive made free-for-alls and created a free-for-all rule set.
Sure.
You can't point to that person. So, of course, if it's popular and it doesn't belong to anybody, they can co-opt it. But if it clearly belongs to somebody, and Nuzlocks clearly do, it's also like the drama over Nintendo saying they don't like Nuzlocks. Well, you can't do a Nuzlocke on an official channel. Like, you can't officially give somebody's fan-created rules.
Yeah,
we did a little bit.
Good, because that's exactly what it was, right? Is that Pokemon, like, those of us who do Pokemon partner stuff, we can do Nuzlocks. We just can't do randomizers. Like, you can play a Nuzlocke, you're fine. Like, if you're playing a Nuzlocke the way that it's built out, where, you know, you only do one Pokemon, one route, you're not altering the game code in any way, they have no issue with that. Like, at all. It's that, like you said, you're pinpointing it exactly. Kit and Krista worked for Nintendo on the official Nintendo account. So obviously they were going to be like, no, don't do a Nuzlocke. Like, naturally, because it's on the official account.
But
if you're a creator, they don't care.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
And like,
but they would care if it was a randomizer, to be fair.
I will say what drove me the most crazy about that conversation wasn't that the fact that they worked in a very toxic environment and like talking about the toxicity of being a corporate creator and what bringing ideas were like that was the important conversation to have. Like, being an official content creator for an official corporation is a toxic environment, and a lot of people do it and live in these toxic. Instead, everybody went off on this completely stupid Nintendo hates Nuzlocks and thinks they're like hacking.
Like, not true. Yeah,
that's not the conversation you should be having. Nintendo needs to be held accountable for creating a very toxic relationship with content creators. But instead,
going back to it,
you are talking about they think Nuzlocke is hacking, and I'm like,
no. Again, it's the way things were worded and like out of context. Because Kit and Krista were saying exactly what you're saying. It wasn't like talking about this thing that is allowed or isn't allowed. It's the way it got taken out of the episode and then regurgitated online and stuff. Yeah, it's like things just get shifted when you remove the context.
It's funny because me and Sarumi like both tweeted the same thing. Hey, we recently talked to the Pokemon company Nintendo. They said it was cool, no big deal. And then like people were like, well, what was the source? Nintendo?
Well, people are like,
yeah,
people
what do you
were
mean?
then like, well,
we
how
were there
dare
at
you?
Worlds. Like, what do you
how
mean?
dare you deny Kit and Krista's reality? I'm like, I'm not denying their reality.
Not at all.
What we were trying to say is the conversation that they meant to have, and we should be having, is that was a toxic environment. That they were not allowed to have input. Like they went on to say, you were afraid to bring up new ideas.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the conversation.
Because you didn't want your bosses to be like, oh,
right.
We have
they
to
didn't
approve
want you
this.
to be
Exactly.
they're a problem. They come up with ideas that like had Kit and Krista sat down and thought like bringing up an official Nuzlocke is a bad idea for all of these reasons, or the person they brought it up to had explained any part of the legal ramifications, it would have been a very different conversation.
Easy
the
conversation.
Point was, they got a toxic response from a toxic work environment. This is what we need to talk about, not that Nintendo thinks Nuzlocke is hacking.
Right.
Yeah. To go back to like the difficulty, I mean, like I think of situations where like people walk into a gym and they knock out like the 5 NPCs, and then they immediately leave to go to the Pokemon Center to come back into the gym to then fight the gym leader. At that point, you've artificially made it easy for yourself, right? Like you could just battle the gym leader with the damaged Pokemon you have, but you're making that choice to make it easy. And if you're in the battle with the gym leader and you decide to use a Hyper Potion or you decide to use a Revive instead of playing it out with the rest of your Pokemon, you are making it quote unquote easier because like you're losing Pokemon. So I don't even know if adding like a Nuzlocke to the game is beneficial, because like if you're using a Hyper Potion to get through that fight, because at the end of the day that's more enjoyable for you versus I'm going to lose here and now I have to do the whole thing over again, like you're subconsciously making those choices because you want a pleasant experience. And I don't think people think of that enough, right? Like I'm going to battle all the NPCs. I'm going to leave and heal. I'm going to go in. I'm going to crush the gym leader. Man, that was easy. But it's like, what were your actions before that? If you like crushed the gym leader and you like spammed Hyper Potions throughout like you're making those decisions. And I don't know. I think the Nuzlocke thing resonates with a lot of people because they're looking at a rule set that exists and they're following those rules versus their own like creative freedom, right? Like when I went through Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, I thought those games were incredibly easy. Also, I've played I've played Diamond and Pearl a million times. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I know what to expect. So, like, I would go in and I would make my own rules for each gym leader. Like, hey, this gym leader, I'm only going to bring in 3 Pokemon. They have 3 Pokemon. Hey, this gym leader, I'm going to try to beat them with 1 Pokemon. When I got to whatever that dude's name is, the daddy guy that's dad of the Zoroark guy, I was like, I'm going to battle him blindfolded with 1 Pokemon. And each one of those fights, were they much harder? No, not really, but they were like significantly more enjoyable because I was making these fun rules. So like I always like try to challenge people that are like, I wish Pokemon would level scale, or I wish Pokemon would be harder. Like, bro, you can do whatever you want before that gym fight. Like,
to be fair, you brought up the whole thing of like you could do kind of whatever you want leading up to it. When I had mentioned I had a hard time with Volo at the end of the game, my team consisted of a Lickitung and an Unknown D. So that was like, that's what I'm talking about. I had Lickitung and Unknown D on my team with the other Pokemon I had caught throughout the game. And I was trying to beat him with the Unknown. And so you get through that first phase of the Giratina fight, I beat him, and then the second phase comes in and kills me with like Shadow Origin or whatever it's called. And I got wiped. So like, that was a big reason probably why that was difficult for me. But you also said something that really just stood out to me, like mentioning the experience was pleasant, right? Like how to make a pleasant experience for yourself. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think all 3 of us probably see Pokemon as a comfort game, right? As something we come back to time and time again because we enjoy it. It makes us feel good. We have a good time playing the games. We like living in this world. We like experiencing, Flamethrower over again or Thunderbolt, just like you were mentioning with like Fira or Curaja in Final Fantasy, right? It's something that brings us joy. It's a pleasant experience. And I think for those of us that are always going to be fans of Pokemon, that like Pokemon regardless if a game's easy or regardless if a game's hard, we're going to make it difficult for ourselves or make it easier for ourselves. At the end of the day, like, our love of that thing is probably not changing in the same way that, like, a newer player who hasn't picked it up in a long time is probably experiencing this game. Someone who did not play Gen 6 or Gen 7, who maybe played Gen 4 or Gen 5, who's getting back into it now because they have a Switch and they want to experience these games again.
Yeah. I think that goes back to, like, the experience thing of, like, well, experience shit makes it too easy, and it's like this is not the crutch you should be relying on. Like,
yeah, right.
Like, have you not played any other JRPG in the last, like, 15 years where experience share is just a default thing?
Yeah.
And
Mario Rabbids right now, literally currently in Mario Rabbids, if you use a team of the Peach Rabbid or Bowser or Peach or whatever, all the other characters, I've not used Rabbid Luigi once in that entire game, and yet Rabbid Luigi is the exact same level as the 3 characters I've been playing with the whole time. So,
all right. Probably spent too long on difficulty. Hey, they showed 20 Pokemon, Roger.
Yes.
What's your favorite?
Smoliv. I love Smoliv. I will protect Smoliv with my life. I love him. I love my little anxiety Olive. I think he's adorable. When I first saw the trailer and they had Pawmi, Smoliv, and Lechonk, I thought, man, Lechonk is awesome. I love pigs. I've always been a fan of pigs. But then I was thinking about it more. And I'm like, I bet you Lechonk's evolution is going to be real ugly, and I bet you Smoliv's is going to be awesome. Because I'm thinking of what they could do with an olive Pokemon, right? And the evolution, and obviously being based on, like, the olive branches that are in the crests of a lot of, like, Spanish royalty families. I think they could do some real cool stuff with, like, an olive crest being sort of like a knight kind of character for an evolution. But even if that thing wasn't to evolve and just be like this little derpy anxiety olive, he speaks to me. I like that. I like that he's this little anxious guy who doesn't know what's going on. His mouth is open. He's looking around all freaked out. He's scared. He's scared to be turned into olive oil. He's scared to be on the menu at Olive Garden. Like, I love him. I'm Italian. My last name's Di Luigi. Baba da Boopy, che cosa. All right? Like, we use olives in cooking. I like Smoliv. I will protect him with my life. That is my favorite.
That's probably the best answer that anyone's ever given for, like,
unacceptable. 100% unacceptable.
Are you into the open world thing? Is that something that you wanted for a long time?
I think Arceus is not only one of my favorite games this year, but it's like one of the best Pokemon games of the past decade, dude. I think, like, the changes that they made to that game, having these open areas that you could wander around and, like, sneak around and throw Pokeballs, I think was great. And so any sort of mix of that we're going to get into what we got with the wild area and Sword and Shield, combining into what Scarlet and Violet's ultimately going to be, I am here for. I feel like making this open world, being able to go wherever I want to go, like going to the gyms or doing a Titan battle, that is super exciting to me, both as a content creator and as a player of these games that's wanted something different for a while. This is the most excited I've been about a Pokemon game in a mainline Pokemon game in a long time. I'm always excited, but I'm, like, supremely excited for this one.
Scarlet or Violet?
Oh, Scarlet, obviously, because of the professor. She's mommy, of course. Why would I ever go with Kit? Yeah, no, I'm going with Scarlet version all day, every day. Now, with that being said, the Violet Legendary is way cooler. Like, at least in my opinion, I think Violet's Legendary, way cooler. I also don't know, because I haven't really been reading into, like, a lot of things about the game beyond what they've revealed. Have they said what Pokemon are version exclusive yet? Because that could potentially sway me. Okay.
They have not said yet.
Yeah, although if Lickitung is exclusive to Scarlet or Violet, I'll have to get the one that has Lickitung in it. Yeah.
Big draw. I do know that I did grow very fond of Koraidon because they only let us play Scarlet at the Nintendo preview, and after riding on Koraidon for an hour, I was like, Koraidon is, like, kind of cute.
Why does it have wheels if it's only going to use its legs?
I love that he uses his legs.
I think it's really weird. Yeah.
Does it have wheels if it's only going to use its legs?
All right, well, no Pokemon of the week because Will's not here. I got 2 question of the weeks though.
Can I choose a Pokemon of the week as the special guest this week? Can I choose a Pokemon of the week? Because I'm going to say it's Lickitung.
Okay,
just for the purposes of
we do
episode,
Pokemon of the week at the very end. So
we're jumping ahead.
Good.
All right, first question is, when version-exclusive gym leaders were announced for Sword and Shield, Will was upset he was going to miss out. Greg agreed, but Steve disagreed and saw it as a positive thing. 3 years later, do you all feel the same thing? That was from Citizen from our YouTube channel.
I mean, I felt like I missed out until they were bad. Like, there's clearly 2 winners and 2 losers of those gym leaders, and I played the right one.
I don't think anyone missed out on Gordy.
No, nobody missed out on Gordy at all. And B was meh. Like
I liked her, but I also love Melody, though. So when it comes down to it, it's like, if I have to weigh B and Melody, I'm taking Melody.
Yeah, Melody and Alistair were far superior. I do still feel that
I don't think they were impactful enough for you to miss anything.
I don't think I felt missed out, per se, because the way they portrayed them, the gym leaders were going to be a bigger part of the game than they actually were. Like, I decided to restart. I just now restarted Sword to see what it's like playing the game with both DLCs at the start. And it's a wild experience. I'm going to tell you that right now. I'm like, I have no idea what's happening in this game right now because you're pulling me in so many different directions everywhere I go. Like, oh, something's happening over here. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to focus on? Because you're now telling me there's like 17 things I have to do. I don't think I feel like I missed out. I think I'm still not thrilled about it because ultimately it's a pointless change. Like, the 2 gym leaders they weren't a big part of the game. They didn't have great personalities. They didn't develop either side. Like, both gyms' puzzles were roughly the same.
They were the same, yeah. They were just,
it was just
color
like,
different.
It was superficial at best. So, I mean, I don't feel like I still don't feel like I missed out. I would say that I don't feel like I missed out, but I still don't think it was a good decision because ultimately it was a pointless decision. It just didn't serve the games.
I like having just more character. I think they've done a really good job at making gym leaders or characters or Elite Four members like as important as Pokemon.
I mean, that was something with Sword and Shield specifically. Is I think there were a couple generations there where, like, I'm a hardcore Pokemon fan. I cannot name all the gym leaders from certain generations, but like Sword and Shield, they were all very, very memorable. Even the ones I didn't like. Like you were talking about Gordy. It's like I didn't care about Gordy, but I remember his name. You know? So I think, however they implemented them into the story, I think was really well done in terms of like you remembering who this person is, even if they didn't actually impact the story that much as a whole.
Yeah, I think I like having multiple gym leaders only because Masters exists now.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that was probably the whole
yeah.
the whole marketing. We need more gym leaders for Masters.
Right. I will say that Cynthia has decided to woo me hard in that game, and I'm not prepared. I am not prepared for this champion knocking at my door all the time.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the right choice to have 2 different gym leaders per every game, but also, like, if you think about Black and White, one game had a whole city that was completely different. It was either Black City or White Forest, and it's like I would argue that was more important than like Gordy and Alistair. Yeah,
I mean, if they had created a completely different town around those, and it felt like a very different shift, that I would be harder on the I think I missed out. I just think ultimately a better decision would have been to have 2 gyms and you pick which one you took on than having them in separate games. I just think it felt then, and it still feels now, that it was a slightly arbitrary way to sell both games.
Yeah, I mean, they're very good at putting out 2 identical games and then selling you both, and then a year later putting the word Ultra before them and then selling
them both again. Exactly.
With a worse story.
Mitch from YouTube.
Yes. Wait, can we hold on? Because I am not normally with someone that agrees with that opinion. Greg, could you say that a little louder for the people in the back regarding what that you just said about Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon? Please, Greg, please.
Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon has a worse story than Sun and Moon. Sun and Moon has the better story.
Unquestionable. This isn't even subjective. This is objective fact.
Objective fact. Sword and Moon has a much better story.
Character massacre on a level Never seen before in Pokemon what they do to Lusamine. Absolutely dreadful. Thank you, Greg. Thank you for speaking to me and all those other people out there that I know feel the exact same way. Thank you.
I do agree. Although, like, if somebody's going to ask me which one to buy, I'm going to say Ultra because there's just way more.
Of course,
content.
there's more content for sure. Yeah.
I always tell people Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon is a better game.
Sure.
They are better games. But the story is way worse in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. And the story in Ultra Moon, Ultra Sun is even worse if you didn't play Sun and Moon, because they kind of shortcut a lot of things, assuming you'd played the first ones. You're like, if I just played this on my own, this story does not make a lot of sense.
Agreed.
The best part about the Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon story is the Ultra Recon Squad freaking out about Furfrou and not understanding. Like, that whole, like, that in itself was great.
I think the Ultra Recon Squad is awesome. I think the implications they did in Sun and Moon of multiple universes existing that they doubled down on in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, like the idea that there are alternate universes, alternate timeline where Pokemon have developed differently, opened them up to a whole new world of Pokemon design.
Yeah.
That I think was important in having the Ultra Recon Squad confirm that these wormholes aren't like weird pockets where only Pokemon exist, but there are also people there who have very different experiences with Pokemon. Like, it's a ripe storytelling beat that they are going to do nothing with, which is a shame. But it at least sort of exists as part of the lore that I think that I will give one credit to the story of Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon for. Like, you introduced and underlined the multi-universe, multi-timeline idea. You did everything else.
I'll co-sign that with you.
You did everything else poorly with the story, but this one beat you did good.
Co-signed. Yep.
We technically already answered this question.
Yeah, we did this a lot. So,
Mitch from our YouTube says, "Do you think the lack of level scaling in in Scarlet and Violet is Game Freak's way of combating players that complain about the games being too easy?" Yeah, I think we had like a 45-minute conversation about that.
Exhaustive, conversation, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, again, the last thing I could say is, like, you know, you can play Breath of the Wild, you can get out of the tomb, you can walk right to Ganon, and Ganon isn't going to scale for you.
Yeah.
Like, he is exactly the level he is at the beginning of the game or at the end of the game. So I can't think of a lot of open world games that do scale. I feel like the last video game I played that scaled was like Final Fantasy VIII, and I hated it.
Yeah, I gotta think about it. I don't know.
There's not a lot that really scale. I think the difference again is the feeling of people feel better when they have more control. Like, you can walk straight to the end of Breath of the Wild, and you're still relying on your ability to roll, dodge, and attack appropriately.
Yeah,
instead of I'm locked into a turn, right? Like, those games feel different because you feel like you have more free will and that you as a person can overcome the levels. Like, I relying on my skill to overcome this level gap, and it's a very different feel than what we have in Pokemon.
Yeah.
All right, Pokemon of the week. It'll be Lickitung.
Woo! Let's go. All right.
What can you tell us about Lickitung?
What can I tell you? This is my absolute favorite Pokemon of all time. Let me tell a little story as to why Lickitung is my favorite, because it's weird. It's not because he's good in Pokemon Go competitive. This is why. Okay. I have a distinct core memory of going to Toys R Us with my dad right after I got into the Pokemon trading card game. This was prior to me ever playing the video games. I didn't own a Game Boy. It was just the card game. So I'd only seen the Pokemon that are in like your initial 2 decks, which were at the time, it was like the Zap deck that had Mewtwo and Pikachu and the Electric and Psychic ones. Yeah. And then it was the deck with Machamp, the starter deck. And I think there was one other one too. Wasn't it like a water fire one?
Yes, there was a water.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So those were my only experience with Pokemon and playing the card game. Okay. And Jungle hadn't come out yet, so I didn't see that Lickitung card yet, whatever. I went to Toys R Us. I got a Nintendo Power with my dad. The only system I owned was an N64, and I saw there was a cover story about Pokemon Stadium. I thought, this is really cool. We walked from the Toys R Us to the Old Country Buffet that was next door, and I sat there at the Old Country Buffet with my dad, eating dinner and reading this Nintendo Power and opening up to this Pokemon Stadium article and being like, wow, they have Pokemon video games? And the first screenshot that I saw was of an in-game screenshot of the Master Stadium and the rental Pokemon. I don't know if you remember the rental moveset of Lickitung in Pokemon Stadium. If you don't, let me remind you, because it's burned into my memory, all right? This man has Thunder, Blizzard, Fire Blast, and Hyper Beam. And I remember seeing this little screenshot of Lickitung in 3D. Mind you, again, the first Pokemon beyond the ones that were on the front cover, like Mewtwo and the starters and Pikachu, the first Pokemon that I ever saw in 3D, Lickitung. And his moveset is Thunder, Blizzard, Fire Blast, and Hyper Beam. I thought this has got to be the most powerful Pokemon of all time. I love this guy. He's so cool. So I played through. After I got that Christmas, I got my Pokemon Yellow. I played through the game. I do, the mystery dungeon at the ending. I catch a Lickitung in the wild. I'm so excited. He's going to destroy everything. I mean, they use him competitively. Come to find out, he's got like Body Slam and Lick. And I'm like, what the heck is this about? Why does he not have Thunder? Why does he not have Fire Blast? Why does he not have Blizzard? Turns out, those are TM moves for him that you could buy from the Celadon department store. You could teach it to him, but it doesn't naturally learn those moves. But it didn't matter because at that point, I was so obsessed with Lickitung, wanting to catch this Pokemon, thinking it was the coolest thing, that I went to Celadon, I bought all the right TMs, and I had my Lickitung in Pokemon Yellow. After beating the game, I didn't care about Mewtwo. Mewtwo who? Mew-who is what his name is. I didn't care about Mewtwo. I had Lickitung, and I gave him Thunder, Fire Blast, Blizzard, and Hyper Beam. And every game in which I could have a Lickitung on my main squad, I have had a Lickitung ever since. I love him. I love the design. I love that of all the Pokemon they could have put in Detective Pikachu, they chose to show what a real-life Lickitung is like. He's horrific, but I love him so much.
It is nightmare fuel.
I'm obsessed.
That thing
I love him.
is terrifying in that.
And then in the anime, right, Jessie gets a Lickitung. She gets a Lickitung, and it's an epic episode of the show where Lickitung's running through this tournament, battling everybody, taking down all these other powerful Pokemon. That ends up being the first Pokemon that gets traded away from a major character in the anime, because she trades the Lickitung for Wobbuffet, who is now a series staple. You would not have Wobbuffet without licking. It wouldn't happen.
That would be fine.
So all the Wobbuffet stands that are out there, I just want you to know, you lived because Lickitung died. Let me say that right now. That is why. You're able to enjoy your wealth of Wobbuffet content because Lickitung was traded away during the Johto era. I love Lickitung. I could talk about this for another 20 minutes. I love the fact that he's good competitively in Pokemon Go now. I didn't even realize it was a thing until Zoe was telling me about it when we were at Worlds, and I'm like, wait, what? So now I'm using all my Lickitungs in Go competitively. I could not be happier. We are in the era of Lickitung. And if I may, one more story just to throw in there to prove that I am the #1 Lickitung stan in the world. All right. In 2019, I went to Japan for the first time. I went to the Pokemon Center. You know, they have those cute little 151 cutie plushies, right, of all the different Pokemon. I go to the Pokemon Center in Osaka, and I walk up to their display, and they have every one of those plushies except one. Greg, can you guess the one plushie they didn't have at the store?
Cramorant.
They did not have a cutie Lickitung. And I asked the store employee in Japan, why are there no Lickitungs? Because if you looked at the store display, they have all the little names written down and their number next to it.
Yeah.
And there was a jump between Rhydon and Hitmonchan, or whatever it is. It's like Hitmonlee and Rhyhorn or something is where Lickitung's in between of the Pokedex. And I'm like, why is there no Lickitung? The store employee in Japan, I kid you not, went, oh yeah, no one likes Lickitung. We just never stock Lickitung. And I was blown away. So I made it a goal for my first ever trip to Japan to go to every Pokemon Center that I could. I went to the one in Osaka. I went to the one in Tokyo. I went to the one at the Skytree. I went to all of them. I could not find a Lickitung. None of them had the Lickitung cutie until the day we were leaving. We were taking the train to Tokyo Airport on our way back, and we had about 30 minutes before we had to board this train. We were on Character Street, in Tokyo Station, and there's a little miniature Pokemon Center on Character Street. And who was displayed on the top shelf of Character Street as the featured Pokemon cutie? Lickitung. It was meant to be. I got myself a Lickitung. I've had him ever since. He's sitting on my shelf right over there. I've got the big Lickitung. I've got so many Lickitungs. Every piece of Lickitung merch they've ever made, I own.
I guarantee you that shop, the Pokemon Center has called and said, there is a weird American running around. Please give him this thing so he stops bothering us. I don't understand what he's saying. He's obsessive. I don't know what he wants to do with this creature. It's super weird. Just get it so he never comes back here. Please. Somebody find one from the back.
You know what's crazy is I went to the Pokemon Center, I think also in 2019, the one in Tokyo, the mega one, the one that has the cafe built into it.
Yep.
And that was the first one I went to, and they didn't have Omanite, and they always have an English speaker at that one. That's what they told me. They're like, we try to have at least one English speaker. And I was like, oh, you guys don't have Omanite? And they were like, oh, no, Omanite is really popular. And I was like, what? And then I proceeded to go to other Pokemon centers, and they also didn't have Omanite. But eventually I found an Omanite at Skytree.
There you go.
But yeah, it was like a very it's almost like when you want a Pokemon and they don't have it, you are suddenly on this mission to be like, oh, we're going to every Pokemon center.
You had the opposite problem, though. Everyone liked Omanite. Nobody likes Lickitung. So they just didn't even bother with Lickitung. Like Greg said, they probably pulled it out of some back warehouse, and they were like, we're putting this up for this weirdo.
Like, track his cell phone, find where he's going, make it obvious so he never comes back to this country. Please. Get rid of this foreigner. I don't like him. They were all
very sweet, though. And actually, in my vlog, one of the employees at the Pokemon Center watched my videos, which was super, super cool. So I mentioned that in the video. Yeah.
I do have a fundamental question, though.
Of course. Ask away.
If this is your favorite Pokemon,
yes,
why am I not seeing it anywhere on your screen right now?
You asked the wrong question. Give me one brief second. Hold on a minute. Let me show you all this lovely Lickitung stuff that I got. Here we go. Yo, Lickitung, you are being called forth.
Why is it in the closet?
Come on down over here. Here we go. This is my backup Lickitung supply. I got to go in the other room to do it. This is how much Lickitung stuff I have. First off, I had to take the headphones off, so I don't know if you guys are talking or not. Here we go. First off, you're not going to find this anywhere, all right? My girlfriend had to search high and low for the one big-sized Lickitung plush they've actually made over the course of how many years of Pokemon from being first gen. Gen 1, every Pokemon's got this big version. Not Lickitung. Nobody's got Lickitung. I have one. I got my big Lickitung. All right. Then you've got the mini-sized Lickitung. This is one of 3 that I own. This is the one that I got when I was in Japan that I got from Character Street from the story. And then last but not least, on top of big Lickitung, middle Lickitung, of course, you got to have baby Lickitung. You got the 3 generations of Lickitung. This is the baby Lickitung plush. Some of you might remember this if you're watching the video version of this podcast. What you can do, as part of a special collection, the Lickitung folds into a Pokeball. It's a little plushie. It's a Pokeball. Take him out. There goes Lickitung, all right? Grandson, son, father, right there. Grandfather, right here. All 3 generations. I got all the Lickitungs. I had Lickitung statues in the other room. We're not going through the whole thing. We've been going for 2 hours, but never, ever, in a public setting, ever question my Lickitung love. Ever.
I'm just going to say, for something I love, I would never just put them in a closet.
Again, those are my backup ones. They are not the ones that are on the shelf.
Do you want
the Pomeranian on here? I'll go get it.
You are on the premier Pokemon podcast, the one that actively destroys other podcasts to make sure they never rise. Right. And you did not display them behind you. You just said,
I should have. I didn't even think about it.
You just said, I'll go with Piplup, my clear, obvious favorite.
Well, he's the one that was closest to me on the bed. But it's Lickitung all day, every day. It always will be.
Closest to you on the bed, but not closest to you in your heart.
No, he's right here. What are you talking about? He's next to my heart. You can't go closer to my heart than this Lickitung right here.
Now that you got called out for your fake tongue-isms.
Absolutely not. How dare you, good sir? How dare you? How dare you question the Church of Lickitung? We shall smite you with all the power of Arceus.
Did you know, according to Bulbapedia,
I have one more question before
of lick and tongue?
I have one more question before we wrap up this episode. Is how do you feel about Lickitung's evolution?
The worst thing ever made. I hate Licky Licky. I hope it never exists ever, and I hope it gets wiped from the Pokedex eventually.
Licky Licky in a movie.
Despise it. I despise it. I despise Licky Licky. I think here we go. All right, we're getting to one more discussion topic. I think it is criminal that Licky Licky is the evolution of Lickitung. Because the one big thing I want to say, from when I was a little kid, and I saw Lickitung in the Pokemon Stadium game in that N64 Nintendo Power showcase thing, I thought Lickitung was going to be part dragon type. Because he has got like a dragon tail, and he's like a lizard thing. I thought he was going to be a dragon type.
I can understand. I see it.
Yeah. So I thought that eventually, if we were ever going to get a Lickitung evolution, that it would be normal dragon, kind of like how Drampa is. Or it would be like a dragon type, it would become a dragon, like dragon flying or whatever, it would just change its typing. And I expected this big Lickitung with wings and an even longer tongue, and he'd be flying around with this derpy little face, and he'd be the cutest little pink dragon you ever done seen. But that didn't end up happening. We got Licky Licky, who's an abomination, who is a built-in bib because he drools over himself all the time. I do not like Licky Licky. I don't. I know he was kind of cute in the most recent card set. So not the Pokemon Go set, but the Darkness Ablaze. Origin. Lost Origin?
Lost Origins.
Okay. There's a Licky Licky card in that is actually cute. That Licky Licky actually looks acceptable. But normally, Licky Licky is an abomination.
How can you hate Licky Licky? Licky Licky literally on his chest tells you if you have a strong Wi-Fi signal. I do not understand.
To a lesser extent, so does Lickitung. I mean, he does
to a much lesser extent.
Yeah, exactly.
It covers that signal. It covers it with a tongue, so you don't know how bad your signal is.
That's right.
True.
That's right.
Roger, where can our audience find you if they want to find you?
You can find me at Rogers Base on YouTube, on Twitter, on Twitch, on Instagram. I stream every Sunday, every Tuesday, and every Friday. And of course, I will be streaming Scarlet and Violet. I cannot wait to play these games. Hopefully, Lickitung's in the Pokedex. If not, we're going to have a problem. Otherwise, I'm just going to have to wait. 0 out of 10. There
0 out of 10. No Licky Licky.
No, I'm sure eventually they'll do Pokemon Home integration. I'll have Lickitung one way or the other. But I think it might be good for me to have a game in which I can't have Lickitung on the main squad because I have to be forced to use somebody else.
Legends.
That's right. I got Smoliv, though. I'm good. Smoliv will carry me through. No problem.
All right. Greg is at White Wing on Twitter. I'm at Dragging a Lake. If you want to follow the podcast on Twitter, at PKMNcast, PKMNcast, Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. But Roger, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me and allowing me to rant about Lickitung. That's great.
Like 2 months in the works, but totally worth it.
Thank you once again. I appreciate it. This was so much fun. I'm just happy to hear somebody else who agreed with my takes on Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon story.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
That's the real takeaway here. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for making it to the end of the show. This has been another episode of the Pokemon Podcast, and we are...
Who's going to say it?
Are you going to say...
Which one do you
I don't say goodbye.
No.
Greg says goodbye.
We usually say it's super effective, but I was going to ask, do you want to say it's super effective?
I'll do it, of course. Yeah,
right,
you going to splice it in right now?
I'll cue it back up. All right, I'll cue it back up.
Here we go.
Right.
Yeah, let's go.
Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week. This has been another episode of the Pokemon Podcast, and we are...
super effective.
Super storytellers of Sun and Moon Unite. We shall prove our worth to the universe.
Indeed. We shall smite the Licky Licky lovers.
Well, I don't know. That one guy turned into a Licky Licky. That was a pretty sweet moment.